So thank you so much, Drs. Bernard Ashby, Naheed Bedelia, and Celine Gounder. You all were a great panel. I wish we had more time. Thank you so much. This morning, President-elect Joe Biden is hitting the bike trail with his wife, Dr. Jill Biden, while Donald Trump left the White House in golf clothes. His motorcade making a deliberate loop around Freedom Plaza, where MAGA supporters are gathering for a rally later today. There's much more AM Joy right after the break.
Okay, we have an announcement to make. Joe Biden is President-elect of the United States.
There are days that leave an indelible mark on our history.
Senator Kamala Harris, now Vice President-elect.
Days we remember where we were when it happened.
Joy is spontaneously breaking out all over America right now.
How we felt, who we were with.
I feel like we've created a better opportunity and a better world for our children.
These are the days that define us.
When our daughter and her kids moved in with us, our bargain detergent couldn't keep
this feud and the count that goes on, and these folks who are gathering in Washington say it's a steal. Do you think it's incumbent upon the president to interrupt them and say, all right, I eventually, if not today, I've lost fairly and squarely, and Joe Biden is going to be the next president of the United States?
As someone who's watched elections for a long time, the margins are not close here, Neil. Again, as we said all along, election night results are unofficial. There is work that needs to be done. There are processes and procedures set out in state law. Each state goes through those processes. Part of the reason it takes a long time is there are safeguards in place to make sure that there is nothing wrong, that there is integrity to the process, that there is accuracy to the process. And when you talk to state and local election officials, Republicans, Democrats, all around the country, they have confidence in this process. They know it worked. They know they ran an amazing election this year. And it's an important part of our democracy to recognize that, acknowledge that, and focus on the facts and the truth of the matter. And that's all that you can really say about this.
All right, Mr. Chairman. Ben Hoagland, the U.S. Election Assistance Commission Chairman. I'm not sure if any of those folks gathering in Washington would like what he just said, but he said it. The election is what it is. We'll have more after this.
It's easier to keep your eye on the future.
Almost innate in him. I mean, it was, the way that we...
Well, Your Honor, the states do have to send out the forms. Those are required by separate provisions, and they serve continuing purposes.
You don't even have to come with me, unless you want to.
Bring what there? You took back everything you ever gave me.
As well as try to convince enough senators, and hopefully if we get the Georgia Senate seats, it will be a lot easier. But you're going to need the talent that Nancy Pelosi brings to the table, the fact that she can really pull together the Democrats and keep them unified in a way that I don't think we've seen anybody else be able to do in recent history. Now, will she get reelected? I don't know. I think she will. I think she still has tremendous support from all corners of the House of Representatives. And again, the challenges ahead for the Democrats are daunting, and I don't think there is no one that is better positioned to meet those challenges and help Joe Biden and Kamala Harris than Nancy Pelosi.
Alice, let me get your take on that from the perspective of, we know the Republicans had their share of intra-party fights, most recently with the Freedom Caucus and the tax bill of 2017 trying to repeal health care. What do you think?
Right. Look, we just look at recent history, Victor, and the Democrats lost seats in the House. And we heard from many of their own mouths that it was in large part due to the progressive policies that they were told to tout. Specifically meaning defund the police, Medicare for all, Green New Deal, and a lot of the far left policies that might work in the AOC district and those in the squad, but it's not a good template for across this country. And what someone really needs to do is sit them down and say, you might be the wind in our sails, but you are not driving the ship. And if Joe Biden and certainly Nancy Pelosi want to make sure that they continue to hold the House and possibly pick up these seats in Georgia in the Senate, which I don't think, they need to make sure that at least for now they need to hold their fire with regards to progressive trying to continue to shove their far left policies down Joe Biden's throat and America's throat, because it doesn't work everywhere. It works in some districts, but it's not a one-size-fits-all policy that works across this country.
Alice, let me stay with you. Is it time to begin the transition?
I think so, yes. Look, we can look at the reality. Right, the numbers. Joe Biden has 306 electoral college votes. Donald Trump is far behind. And from the numbers standpoint, I don't see them changing no matter how many times we recount. But I think at the same time, it's important, if this president wants to make sure that every vote is counted and make sure that it is legal and make sure that it is legitimate, I see no problem whatsoever in verifying the validity of these votes and making sure ballot integrity is intact.
Is that what
But
he's doing,
also,
really? I mean, if you look at his
the fact-
Twitter account, Alice, he's saying that if there are any questions in some states, move them immediately to the Trump win category. That doesn't sound like someone who's trying to validate the votes or to make sure that every legal vote's counted. This sounds like someone who wants to overturn an election.
Well, that's not going to happen given the sheer margins, Victor. Joe Biden is won by tens of thousands in these states. It's not going to happen. I'm a firm believer in the integrity of our election process. We need to let this play out. But we can also acknowledge that President-elect Joe Biden is the president-elect, and he needs to be able to get the information. He needs to be able to get the funds and resources in order to begin that transition process. And I see there's no time like the present for that to happen.
Maria, the president-elect said of the presidential daily briefings, which if he were to begin this transition as ordered by GSA, he would get. He said this week on Tuesday, access to classified information is useful, but I'm not in a position to make any decisions on these issues anyway. It would be nice to have, but it is not critical. If he says it's not critical, is it urgent that he gets that transition, the beginning for those briefings?
I do think that it's critical for him to get, but he's right. It's not like he can do anything about it right now. I think what he was doing, Victor, is to allow for everyone to calm down, to take a breath. This is what he does best, especially at this moment in time when tensions are at their highest. But look, I think even senators on the Republican side are saying that they believe it's time for Joe Biden to get the daily briefing, especially on national intelligence. He needs to start getting up to speed on what it is that we are facing from a national security standpoint. We've all talked about how the 9/11 Commission talked about the delay in the daily briefings that the Bush administration got and how that could have contributed to things falling through the cracks for 9/11. We certainly don't want anything to happen in terms of that. And so I think that what Joe Biden is trying to do is, again, sort of calm the fears and the tensions. He's saying, look, everything's going to be okay. He's confident that he will be the next president of the United States. The transition will happen whether or not Donald Trump wants it to or whether he concedes, and that he will start getting the daily briefings and everything else that he is entitled to in due time.
Yeah, Maria, to you, let me put this this way. Is an outgoing President Trump rallying in a state that he lost for Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue over the next 7 weeks good for Democrats, good for Jon Ossoff, good for Reverend Raphael Warnock?
I think that what that demonstrates is a president who is still clinging desperately to power as he sees it disappear. Now, whether it's good for the Donald Trump base, absolutely. Is it good for Democrats? I think it's something that Raphael Warnock and Jon Ossoff can use to demonstrate to their base and to the very energized Democrats and activists and independents who helped us take Georgia, that this is a president who is unfit to take office, who is incompetent, who, in the face of a pandemic that has taken more than 240,000 American lives, the only thing that he cares about is his own political future. He cannot let go and look at reality. He does not want to focus on a transition and a peaceful transfer of power, which is the bedrock of democracy. I think they can use it to their advantage to show Georgians that this is not a president who is fit for office, and therefore, what does that say about the Senate candidates that he's supporting?
Alice, to you.
Full on your hand.
Appliance shopping improved.
Resources like reminder posters, social distancing guides.
Increasingly difficult now. Lawyers now say they cannot find the parents of 666 children who were separated at the border. That's higher than a previous estimate of 545. President-elect Biden has pledged to create a task force to reunite the children with their families, but so far he has not confirmed that separated parents can come to the U.S. Joining me now, MSNBC correspondent and my friend Jacob Soboroff, author of a great book, Separated Inside an American Tragedy, and of course, Congressman Joaquin Castro, who's chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. Congressman, I want to start with you. Thank you so much for being here with me today. We've had your brother Julian on many times, so happy to welcome you to the AM Joy Show. I want to ask you, because you've been out front on this issue, certainly many members of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus have made statements. What is the process? Like, where are we? Because the only reason this is not a breaking news banner all the time is because these are not white children being pulled away from white mothers. So where do we as a nation stand on reuniting these children with their parents? How do we make this happen?
Well, that's a great question. And the truth is, under the Trump administration, we're in limbo. We're nowhere. And I've been encouraged by Joe Biden saying that he's going to form a task force to actually reunite these parents with their children and go and find them. One thing that I have suggested is that the State Department take the lead on that. So that's encouraging. But we also, I think, need to form a Human Rights Commission, or the Congress should form a special select committee to review these human rights violations, figure out how we make sure that this kind of thing doesn't happen again, and also hold people accountable who may have intentionally abused the human rights of these parents and these children. Because remember, for generations, the United States has stood as a North Star to folks who are seeking refuge and asylum, who are fleeing oppression and violence and dangerous conditions. And then the Trump administration, to send a message to people, intentionally caused irrevocable harm and trauma to these parents and these young kids.
And we need to be clear, this is not just an issue of reuniting 666 children, which is in itself a travesty, but also the treatment of people at the southern border. Congress released an alarming report earlier this year exposing some of the conditions at these ICE detention centers, which included poor physical and mental health care, failure to protect people from the COVID-19 virus, which is ravaging our country as we speak, and constrained access to even legal services. So in this Human Rights Commission you want to create, will anybody be held accountable for some of these abuses that we've seen? There's the nurse who blew the whistle on women getting hysterectomies without their consent. What's going to happen? Who's going to pay for this?
Well, I mean, those are all questions that this country needs to answer, and I think the new government can be part of answering. As you're right, I think people have to be held accountable. Otherwise, there is a temptation when you get the next Stephen Miller and the next Donald Trump in the White House for a president and others around him or her to advise the same thing. And I have a piece of legislation also with Senator Blumenthal that would reunite these families and allow them to remain in the United States. And I think that would be the right thing to do for them and for our country.
Jacob, let me ask you, first of all, your book is amazing. It's such a great insight into what's happening at the southern border. What have you witnessed that can make people treat this with the urgency it deserved? We have 666 children who are ripped away from their parents, and we don't know if they will be reunited or not. What have you witnessed that will press upon lawmakers that these are parents who love their children just like you love your children? How can we center them at this conversation in this moment of a perpetual breaking news cycle?
Well, you know what, Tiffany, I think most important is something that I didn't realize at the time when I went inside these facilities and saw what, today we all know Physicians for Human Rights describes as torture, and the American Academy of Pediatrics describes as government-sanctioned child abuse by the Trump administration. What I know today, and I think what the congressman has alluded to, is that what we're dealing with is decades of deterrence-based, punitive-based immigration policies that have been carried out, quite frankly, by both Republicans and Democrats. And Donald Trump was only able to separate children like that because this system existed. And while Donald Trump may very well soon be gone, the system that allowed him to do this is not going to be gone. And so President-elect Biden, Vice President-elect Harris have promised this task force to immediately reunite children with their families that were taken by this administration. But the big open question, and we're waiting to hear this from the incoming administration, is where will they reunite those families? If it's not here on U.S. soil, you're going to have a lot of very unhappy activists, immigration lawyers, and most importantly, these parents who came here to seek asylum because they were fleeing conditions in their home country. Those 666 are just the tip of the iceberg. We know that there are over 5,400 children who were taken from their parents, and every one of the parents who was deported without their children, according to the ACLU, deserves to be reunited here on U.S. soil. And so those specifics, we're waiting to hear still from the Biden-Harris transition team.
You raise a really good point, because of the 666 that we know about, who knows how many other children there are that are just unaccounted for. But more importantly, some parents, the government has been trying to locate some parents, and they're just not able to be found in their native countries. Now, many of these parents were fleeing gang violence. Many of these people were fleeing narco states. Should we assume the worst? And I'll ask you that, Congressman Castro.
Well, I mean, you're right. Look, I think on some level there's a reason they were leaving, right? People don't generally want to make a 1,000-mile trek with young kids just for fun. I mean, they're fleeing very violent and dangerous situations. So in that sense, you want to think that anything is possible. But what we haven't seen from the Trump administration and from the U.S. government is really the best and most earnest effort to actually try to find these parents and reunify them with their children. And I believe that Joe Biden, in putting together this task force, and Kamala Harris will actually do that. But as Jacob mentioned, there's a question then, once they're reunited, where do they go, right? And I believe, Senator Blumenthal believes, and others believe, that they should be here in the United States.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world.
Your cold by 42%.
This is nice.
Might not make your first date 42% better. Shorten your cold.
Bank this week. Are you now counting and planning on this vaccine getting rolled out as soon as next month, as everybody is saying, or is it still kind of iffy?
It's not so much iffy, but we also haven't taken it to the bank yet. We haven't seen the data. The data will be presented to the Food and Drug Administration. It will take them some time to review it. That will be quite public. We'll all have a chance to see that. But I do believe we'll start vaccinating first-line workers, healthcare workers, emergency medical technicians, people who work in nursing homes, starting at the end of the year. That would be very good. But before it gets rolled out to people who are older, ill, essential workers, and then the general public, that will extend over many months. This is a 2-dose vaccine, and it can only be given in certain locations because it has to be kept very cold. You need trained workers to give it. It won't be in doctors' offices or pharmacies. And then there's one other thing. The vaccine really hurts when it goes in, and it makes people feel crummy, many of them, for about a day or so. You can get a degree of fever. That's your immune response, starting to work on that vaccine. But then we'll have to get people back for that second dose when the first one was out. And that will be difficult. So we'll have to give a lot of reassurance.
So Dr. Schaffner, it sounds like you're telling us we've got a whole lot to look forward to this weekend. But thanks for laying it on the line for us and being honest and realistic. We really appreciate it. We appreciate your time this weekend. Thanks so much. We'll have you back soon.
Glad you're better, Jillian.
Thank you, sir. Leland?
Well, the recount in Georgia continues all the way through the weekend. Live pictures right now in Fulton County. whether they are going to have to count every ballot and examine it by hand. What that means for the results when we come back.
When our country used to flex its muscle.
National response to that. I think Joe Biden's speech in Pittsburgh is some good architecture on how we can build forward with trying to, again, rebrand the Democratic Party and solve both the issues that are real around, communities of color and policing, but also saying, look, we respect and honor good cops who put their lives on the line every single day, and their spouses and kids and parents worry about them every time they lace up their boots and put on the badge. So we've got to take the temperature down, which Joe Biden is going to do, and then heal. But we've got to get away from, as Congressman Clyburn says, this sloganeering that may sound good. It may work well on Twitter, but it doesn't work well when it hits the ground. And that's why I think we've had a lot of these candidates that just couldn't beat that back. And Trump, to his credit, I mean, he used it as a bludgeon, and it was effective.
Yeah. What about coronavirus cases? You're well aware they are surging across this country. You have House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell at odds, in fact, over the size of another relief package. What is it going to take to actually break this impasse? Is there any chance this gets done before the holidays?
God, I hope so. When you see the numbers in some of these states, and you see the economic situation, we had a number of people here in Ohio get letters from the ruling that the Department of Labor issued through the state of Ohio saying they wanted $20,000 in back pay for some of the pandemic unemployment assistance that they got, which is crazy. I mean, these folks are hanging on by a thread. And so it's the public health piece and the economic piece, and we have to address both of them. And look, if the package isn't as big as we want, I think we got to move forward with something, because I'm telling you right now, I've got constituents of mine, they're worried about getting, modest amount of Christmas gifts for their kids. They're worried about getting evicted. They're worried about paying the rent. I mean, it is scary. I've had a number of people text me just in the last couple days. They're ready to have a nervous breakdown, and I can't blame them. I mean, this is some scary stuff, and Washington's got to work. It may not be everything we want, but we've got to get something out the door to help these families, especially around the holiday season.
Yeah, you're relaying very sobering concerns. Congressman Tim Ryan, it's good to see you, my friend. Thank you so much.
Always good to be with you.
Thank you.
Revealing earlier this morning after he finished that second round, hasn't been feeling well.
And as I kept going through the round, I started getting a little dizzy. I don't know what was going on, something weird. So I got checked for COVID last night, and I was fine, nothing. But I had to do the right thing and make sure that there was nothing more serious than that. But I don't know what it is or what happened, but these past couple days I've felt really, really odd and just not 100%.
All right, we'll wait and see if Bryson can feel better and maybe make a move up that leaderboard, Erica. But I tell you what, it's just a beautiful day here in Augusta again, and we should be in for one exciting finish here at the Masters with so many big names and players tied or within a shot of that lead right now.
Friendly competitions of
142, his second career 100-yard game. And he finds the end zone on just an incredible effort as his coach, Tom.
But I think I've aged too well. Some might say perfect. Who's ready to show him who's the cheesiest? I woke up feeling the cheesiest, coach!
Black Knights respond with a long drive, don't they?
In the league, those were kind of the big two before.
The first time of the year was a treat.
We went up.
United Healthcare's variety of plans.
Trump rally pre the election. One of the things we're hearing is chants of count every vote, and that's what they're doing in Georgia right now as the recount there in the presidential race continues. Jonathan Seri in Fulton County, Georgia, where the counting is going on behind him. Hi, Jonathan.
Hi there, Leah. And what you see going on behind me is actually unfolding in all 159 Georgia counties. They are putting human hands and human eyes on every single ballot. This is an audit to verify the accuracy of the original electronic count done by Georgia's new voting machines. President Trump tweeted earlier his displeasure with Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, whom he endorsed 2 years ago, because this retally does not include signature verification of the ballots. But state elections officials explain once a ballot is accepted and cast, it becomes anonymous. Take a listen.
This is an audit of the ballots that came through legally. It's going to have to be a post-election situation to look for individuals who may have violated the law and voted, double voted, and if anybody has cast a ballot for a dead person, that's a violation of the law. However, in Georgia, the state constitution requires that there's a privacy of the ballot, so there's no way to tie an individual ballot back to an individual human being.
The numbers produced by this hand tally will become the state's final certified result in the presidential election only. It does not affect Georgia's 2 U.S. Senate races in which incumbents Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue are heading into January 5th runoffs against Democratic challengers Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff.
And in order for the incoming presidential administration to be able to lead us out of this pandemic and invest in economic recovery, we need to win these 2 Senate races.
And so Georgians are rising up in this moment, and I believe that they will show up because they know that come January 5th, health care access is on the ballot.
We are the firewall, not just for the U.S. Senate, but the future of our country.
And with the balance of power in the U.S. Senate in play, spending going into these runoffs, analysts believe it will be at least $200 million and possibly as high as $500 million by both parties. Leland?
Yeah, and then you think about all the dark money as well. Jonathan Seri, as the recount continues in Georgia, back to you throughout the day. And we're back with Tony Katz and his thoughts on the Senate race in Georgia in just a minute.
Need life insurance? SelectQuote.
I saw you shaking your head at that one. So what's your response to that headline?
It's a big mistake, and it's obviously President Trump trying to build up his talking points for his run in 2024. You know, there's always going to be an emotional appeal, Alex, to bring the troops home by Christmas. But hey, here's a news flash. We already brought home the vast majority of troops. When I commanded that mission as the NATO commander, we had 150,000 troops there. We're down to about 8,000 American troops. So 95% have come home, the vast majority on Barack Obama's watch, by the way. That last 8,000 troops is what is holding the peace process together. And if we just pull them out suddenly, that peace process, which is looking pretty promising, is going to collapse, and we're going to end up with a Vietnam-style collapse. It's the wrong move.
There's something else of concern here from the Washington Post reporting today that Mark Esper sent a classified memo to the White House days before the election saying he was not in favor of the president withdrawing troops from Afghanistan by Christmas. And I should add that Trump has not given a reason for firing Esper, but what concerns you most about this?
Well, let's back up to Lafayette Square. This is where Mark Esper's problems really began, when he did not come out forcefully in support of the president after that debacle where we saw troops used to wipe away peaceful protesters. And after that, he was never going to make it with Donald Trump, and you began to hear a great deal of commentary from inside the building and inside the White House about how he was undermined for not being part of the true believers in the Trump mission. Then you come along to Afghanistan, Alex, and again, he simply wasn't supporting the president sufficiently. And so President Trump took out a knife and stuck it in his back.
Is it safe to say that Esper was undermined really for telling the truth?
Absolutely, in both cases, and for, in my view, taking the right policy approaches for the nation. He was sacrificed on that altar, and I commend him for standing his ground.
Yeah. Give me your overall take on Christopher Miller as the acting Secretary of Defense. Is he seen as a Trump loyalist like some of the others who've been installed during this shakeup this week?
Yes, very much so. And just to put it in perspective, 4 out of the top 6 civilian leaders in the Pentagon were fired in the last 5 days. That's really quite remarkable. And Colonel Miller, who was retired Army colonel, credible career in Special Forces, but he was many, many layers down in the chain of command, and he's been just pulled up to be the Secretary of Defense. You can only assume because of his loyalty to the president, along with the new acting Undersecretary for Policy, a retired 1-star named Tata, and a couple of other real Trump loyalists have drifted into these positions in an acting capacity. The good news, Alex, is that they've only got a couple of months here. I think the Biden team is going to sweep into power and do a very good job in the Pentagon.
But until that happens, explain to me why your concerns about Christopher Miller exist. Because, as you say, he was well respected. He was the head of Special Forces, correct? What is it that he's missing that in his vault up to being Secretary of Defense you think is going to fall through the cracks?
Number one, he is not briefed up. He's not in the flow tactically. And every week, a Secretary of Defense has to sit down and direct where U.S. military forces go. Number two, he's a Special Forces guy. He's got a very narrow view based on that experience set. Rising to the rank of colonel is a real achievement. It's not like being a 3-star or 4-star officer, say General Jim Mattis. He doesn't have that broad view of the world. Should a carrier battle group go to the Arabian Gulf or to the South China Sea? Those aren't the kind of things that being a colonel in the Special Forces prepares you for. And third and finally, he is inexperienced in the strategic side of this thing, as in doesn't know how the nuclear codes work, just doesn't have the background or experience to take on this job during a transition, along with no other support because all the people just below him were cleared out as well, Alex. We ought to be a bit concerned about this over the weeks to come.
I'm glad you've reiterated that, which you laid out so concisely in your Time magazine op-ed. I appreciate that. Admiral, it's good to see you. And again, author of the
balconies, masked and alone in homes, people joined together to give thanks to those incredible heroes who spent their days tending to the sick, helping families say goodbye, and holding back their own pain to keep saving countless lives.
That's so nice. I don't think there's any words for that, but to everybody, thank you.
CNN Heroes is brought to you by Humana, a more human way to healthcare, and by Rocket Mortgage. Need to know?
Luke's fiance wishes him luck as he gets set to
boogie on it.
Getting cake. What? Going with Nancy Duck. At least Geico may.
Indeed exists. We exist. We exist. Donald Trump didn't need dead people voting for him because he had every single one of you. Every single one of you. This election, the stakes cannot be overstated. We are in a battle for our country's foundational values. We are again at that point that Reagan once talked about it. We are in a time of choosing, where we must decide what type of nation we will be. Will we be a nation of lawlessness and open borders, or will we be a nation of law and order, a nation where the American people are put first, where we are still able to say, God bless America? That is the country I want to live in. That is the country that I love. That is the country that I adore. And that is the country that we are out here today to fight for, to protect, and to defend. And we will win. We will win. They think they've got us going. They think they've got us down. But what they have underestimated in this fight is the heart and dedication and the love for our country we have. America is the greatest nation in the world, but it is made great by the continued activism, the continued work and perseverance of patriots like yourself. And what they realize that we are not taking any off days. The fight is just beginning, and we are in the game for the long haul. We will make America great again. We will keep America great. And Donald Trump will be the president of these United States for 4 more years. Thank you.
What's up? Stop the steal! My name is Daniel Bostic. I have a message for these media people who are sort of infiltrating our ranks. And the message is this: we are the majority. Back in 2018, I helped Ali Alexander launch Stop the Steal in Broward County, Florida. And there was something interesting that happened in Broward because after the 2018 midterms, we noticed that days after the election, the results started changing. Magically, new votes were found all over Broward County, Florida. We were getting reports of ballot boxes being found in rental cars, in gyms, in shopping malls. And so what we did was we descended on Broward County, Florida with a friend of mine named Laura Loomer. Maybe you've heard of her. And let me tell you something, when those corrupt election officials saw Laura Loomer roll up with a megaphone, you could feel the wave of fear. But it wasn't just us. We had an entire army of patriots behind us. We were just a small piece of a greater team. Brave patriots in Florida stepped up, they showed up, they protested, and we held our election officials accountable. They knew that we were outside and that we were watching every single thing they did. We did it because we realized that we had to bypass the mainstream media, that we can't rely on technology or social media anymore, that we need bodies in the streets to demand fair, free, and open elections. They can't ignore us anymore. Thank you guys so much for being here, and the best is yet to come.
I am so proud that I serve my country.
Transition Signature Gen 8. Available now in 4 new styles.
Cancer, stomach cancer, liver cancer, pancreatic cancer. Do not stop taking a prescribed medication without first consulting with your doctor. Discontinuing a prescribed medication without your doctor's advice can result in injury.
Even if the information that they believe is actually false. And we know that all of the states have said that this has been a free and fair election, and that it appears, although it has not been certified in all states yet, that Joe Biden is the winner of this presidential election. That being said, a lot of these folks here, and there are thousands of people, I'll give you a look, we're going to go sort of pointing down towards Freedom Plaza where everyone started walking. The march is on. It started about 15 minutes ago, and they're going to march all the way to the Supreme Court, where we understand there are some folks that are out there from the left who are defying this group of folks who believe that Donald Trump should be in office for another 4 more years. That is not going to happen by all accounts. All of the electors, there is a number out there that everyone is talking about, 306, and that number is the winning number for Joe Biden. He will have that many electors when all of the votes have been certified at this point. But folks here don't believe that. They still believe they have a chance. And they are walking with signs like Stop the Steal and walking with signs like Trump for 4 more years. There are lots of different disparate groups. There are white supremacist groups here. There are regular Americans who just support Trump here. There are legislators here. There are members of Congress here. There are members of militant groups. You see walking here. You've got the 3%ers here. You've got the Oath Keepers here. You've got the far-right group, the Proud Boys here. You've got lots of different groups who have come together under several different umbrellas, but they're all here with one real message, and that is that they don't believe that this was a fair and free election, although they do believe that 2016 was a fair and free election, and so it's hard to get a real sense of why they think Republicans who won in their districts got and were fairly elected, and why they think that Joe Biden was not fairly elected. All that being said, in January, we fully expect that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will take the helm as President and Vice President of these United States. Erica.
So there's a significant number of people there, and we saw you a short time ago. Folks were with us. I mean, you're really sort of in the middle of a crowd, packed in fairly tight. Obviously, it's a little bit more spread out now as they're walking, making their way, as you point out, to the Supreme Court. Look at any big event, whether it's folks celebrating when they were happy to see Joe Biden declared the winner last weekend, or folks here who are protesting the outcome of the election. You have to wonder in the middle of a pandemic about how distant people are, whether there is mask wearing. Are you seeing either of those things? Does that seem to be a concern for folks?
It's about 50-50. I'm gonna have Albert turn the camera around for us, and you will see there are some folks who are wearing their masks and some folks who are not. Now, we're actually in an area where people can actually be pretty spread out from each other. But there are folks who seriously believe that they should not have to wear masks, and they're not wearing them. And then there are folks who have the masks on and are even holding signs that they don't believe they should have to wear them, but they're wearing them for the safety of others and themselves. But again, you see all sorts of people, young, older, you see college students who are out here as well. And for the most part, folks have been self-distancing, but as you can see, there's a lot of people who are all gathered together, and you know that could definitely cause a problem. It certainly causes concern whether you're here supporting Donald Trump or whether you see the crowds that were, you know, celebrating, a week or so ago for Joe Biden. Erica.
Sarah Seidner, appreciate it. Thank you. In his first public appearance since his defeat, President Trump did not mention the election results. For more now, let's bring in Sarah Westwood at the White House. So Sarah, the president, as we know, has refused to concede the election. His administration also is not actively helping the Biden team with the transition, which is a normal part of the transfer of power. That's not happening, and that could have some really serious consequences.
Yeah, Erica, ordinarily that's a process that would be well underway. There are offices here in Washington that have been set aside for the Biden team's use for the transition. Those are just sitting empty. Now, a week has gone by since Biden was declared the winner of the election, and every day in the transition process is very important. It's enormously complicated and extensive. But federal agencies from the State Department to the Treasury Department are effectively just twiddling their thumbs right now. They're really in an awkward position because they haven't gotten the sign-off from the White House to initiate contact with their counterparts on the Biden transition team. So the whole administration really in a holding pattern while the president continues his refusal to concede. No concession appears to be on the horizon. Today, President Trump hit the golf course earlier this morning, so today does not appear to be the day that he is going to issue that concession. And multiple cabinet members in this administration have also suggested that there might not even be a Biden transition at all. But yesterday, something pretty significant.
You are going to demand an
public appearance this week, and during that, he acknowledged, even for just a brief moment, the possibility that he might not be getting a second term.
This administration will not be going to a lockdown. Hopefully the whatever happens in the future, who knows which administration will be, I guess time will tell, but I can tell you this administration will not go to a lockdown.
Now pressure is mounting on President Trump.
I want you guys to know that you have changed my life. I'm deeply grateful, I'm deeply humbled, and I'm deeply honored. And I look forward to remaining in this fight with you. And President Trump, we have your back!
Okay. Who's glad to be at this rally? Hold on. I think our microphone's messing up, but we'll accommodate, right? All right. TrumpMarch.com. This is Jennifer Holtze. I'm with Women for America First. We're so glad to have you today. And you talk about Georgia. We've got a great lady here today to talk to you about what she's going to do for the United freedoms. My name is Marjorie Taylor Greene. I am Congresswoman-elect from Georgia's 14th District. And I am here to represent my district, but I am here to represent every single one of you. Because this is only beginning. You see, I'm not a politician. I'm a proud American woman. And I'm here because this is what we have, ladies and gentlemen. The Democrat Party is no longer an American party. No. They're the party of socialism, the party of riots, the party of burning businesses, the party of AOC's Green New Deal. They're the party that wants to murder babies up until birth and make taxpayers pay for it. And they're the party that wants to take away your guns. This is the party that is working very hard to steal this election and stop Donald J. Trump from being our president for 4 more years. You see, I've lived the American dream. I'm a business owner, a wife, a mother of 3 kids, the first person in my family to get a college degree. I'm a blessed American, and I thank God for allowing me to be born right here in this country. And I'm here coming to work in Congress because I want my children and I want your children and our grandchildren to be able to live the same American dream. It does not matter who you are, your identity. If you're an American, you are guaranteed these freedoms. But I want to ask every single one of us, and I want you to think really hard. What kind of generation of Americans are we? There were generations who fought to save our freedoms, fought to give us our freedoms, fought to preserve our freedoms. And if we are complacent in our time, we will be the generation that loses our freedoms. And I refuse.
A 400-name list of recommendations to Biden's transition team for positions throughout his administration. Their co-founder telling the New York Times this yesterday, our assumption is that the transition wants to appoint good people, and so we are making it easy for them to appoint good people by doing the heavy groundwork. Another progressive group, the Sunrise Movement, has their own wish list with squad members, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib as HUD Secretary and Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal as HHS Secretary. And for Treasury Secretary, their pick is Senator Warren. But Bloomberg is reporting that the short list for Treasury Secretary right now does not have Senator Elizabeth Warren on it, and at the top of it right now is the former Federal Reserve Chairman, Janet Yellen. Jillian?
I mean, Hillary, it looks like it's going to be awfully hard for some of the folks on these short lists to get through Senate confirmation. Thanks for keeping us up to date on all of these. We will check back with you again. Thanks. Leland?
Getting through Senate confirmation is going to contend a lot on the Georgia Senate race. As we take a look at live pictures outside now, as the groups of President Trump supporters continue to grow here in Washington, you really have to think that the groundswell of support of folks flying in from all over the country to be here 2 Saturdays after elections speaks to the kind of support and the kind of organization that's going to happen in the Georgia Senate races. We'll tie all that together when we come back. Sure, whatever you want, buddy.
We made USAA insurance for members like Martin, an Air Force veteran made of doing what's right.
In just 10 states, Walmart will once again monitor the number of customers in its stores to make sure capacity remains at 20%. Major grocery chains like Publix and Kroger, they are reinstating purchasing limits on items like toilet paper. And some states are implementing new coronavirus restrictions. New York and New Jersey restaurants must close at 10 p.m. Oregon restaurants can only offer takeout now, and North Dakota is under a statewide mask mandate. Join me now, NBC News senior medical correspondent Dr. John Torres. Always good to talk with you, Dr. John. Let's get to this. If you look at how many cases the U.S. has added every day this week, in fact, for the last 10 days, the number just keeps rising. So how concerned are you? Are we able to get control of the spread? What do we have to do?
And Alex, I'm very concerned about the direction we're taking right now. And like you mentioned here, and you saw in the graphic, the numbers keep climbing. 176,000 yesterday, huge numbers. If you remember back a week ago or so, some of the experts were saying that we're probably going to get around 300,000 during the holiday season. And a lot of people are kind of scoffing at them, saying those numbers are alarmist. These same experts a few months ago were saying that we would hit 100,000 by this time. And so they actually were erring on the light side, because now we're much, much higher than that. And the concern is, Alex, is right now we are not even into our winter months. We're not into our cold months. And we know once we get there, this virus is going to be more active. People will be closer together. It's going to spread more. Plus, we're coming into our holiday seasons where people are going to be traveling and going with families, even though the recommendation is not to do that. The realism is they are going to do that. And so we're going to see numbers skyrocket. And like some of the experts were saying last week and the week before, we could be looking at 300,000 cases. And the problem is not only are cases going up, but you're seeing hospitalizations going up. You're seeing ICUs that are getting limited on how many patients they can take, or even getting full at this point. And then you're seeing, unfortunately, deaths going up as well. Deaths do follow cases by a couple of weeks. And so I think over the next couple of weeks, you're going to see those deaths go even higher. They're at over 1,000 a day for the last few days. I think we're going to see that trend continue, unfortunately.
Absolutely. I mean, you see the numbers, the cases, they're rising in 49 states, Dr. John. I mean, what is it that's happening? Are people just letting their guard down?
Alex, it comes down to human behavior, and we know the things that help keep it under control. And everybody keeps saying, you know, once the vaccine comes out, once we get the vaccine, and it is coming, but even once we get the vaccine, we're still going to need to do these things to get through this pandemic, and we still have a ways to go. And part of that means doing those things we know work. Wearing a mask, social distancing, washing your hands, those are important. And you're seeing states right now mandating these masks, but a lot of times you're seeing people too. For example, I went to a store the other day, and there was a gentleman not wearing a mask. It just confounds me that people aren't doing that, because right now in today's day and age, you know that those masks can help. And the CDC actually came out with some information saying that those masks are actually a two-way street. They're not just helping me make sure you don't get sick from anything I might have, but they're helping me make sure I don't get sick from anything you might have as well. Extremely important, Alex.
Yeah, okay. I want to dig deeper into these numbers, because if you look at some of them, let's compare mid-May. That's when there were 28,000 new cases on May 14th, just over 2,000 deaths. Compare that to yesterday, the U.S. adding 176,000 plus new cases and recorded 1,200, a little over 1,200 deaths there. What do you get from those numbers? Is the reality that we are at least now better able to treat the virus? Is that what contributes to a lower death rate?
So there's a few things happening, and on the bad side of things, it's like I talked about. The death rate follows the cases by a few weeks. Usually you have cases, then you have hospitalizations 2 weeks later, and 2 weeks after that you have death rates going up, and so it could be even over a month time period. And so those ones you showed in May are actually coming from March and April time frame. And so we still need to wait a while to see where we are, but a couple of things are happening. Number one, we know better how to treat coronavirus. We know things that work now that we didn't know back in March and April time frame that can certainly help out. Number two is March and April, it was really hitting those above the age of 65 hard. It was hitting nursing homes and assisted living centers very hard. Now it's hitting younger people, particularly those that are going out to the bars and restaurants. They tend to survive better with coronavirus, but they can pass it on. So again, I think we'll know over the next few weeks where that death rate is going to go. It's going to go higher. It's just a matter of how much higher it goes. But like you said, Alex, we have a better idea how to treat it, and luckily it's not hitting those most vulnerable at this point.
Dr. John Torres, always a...
What could be coming in terms of hospitalizations?
So thank you for having me, Erica. So, I think that, hospitals across the country have tried to prepare as best as they could. But the fact is that they're going to be receiving an onslaught of patients. They are receiving an onslaught of patients. And with the cases increasing exponentially over the last even few days, our hospitals are going to be at and over capacity. And what happens when that happens is that it compromises the care that patients receive, not just patients that are coming in with coronavirus, but patients that are coming in for run-of-the-mill illnesses like heart attacks and strokes. And so that's what we really have to be concerned about, even over the next week or so.
As we look at all of this, I know you're founder of Advancing Health Equity, which is focused on the bias in healthcare. One thing that coronavirus has really exposed, I would say, is the long existing disparities when it comes to healthcare in this country. And as we look at this new updated data on COVID-19 from the CDC, we're seeing that hospital rates among Black and Latino Americans is something like 4 times higher than it is for white Americans. We've been talking about this a lot since the spring. Is it your sense that anything is changing?
So I am encouraged by the Biden-Harris Transition Task Force. One of the plans is to develop a committee that will address racialized health disparities. And what I actually hope they do is to develop state task forces, because the needs of Black communities and other communities of color are unique. They need to start with a robust testing and tracing infrastructure, ensuring all community members have personal protective equipment. But even more important will be messaging and outreach, and that will require collaborations between the private sector departments of public health and the federal government as well. Because what we'll see is the numbers will worsen even more, and these communities were already vulnerable and at risk for being infected with the virus.
You bring up testing. There were new reports of the clinical labs are worried about being able to keep up. There are plenty of reports of extended wait times just to get a test, and then we're starting to hear about results taking a little bit longer. To your point, we're going to see more and more people wanting to get tested. Where do we stand as a country in terms of being able to meet that need right now?
Right, and so we desperately need to ramp up testing. And I think that right now, we have some options in the rapid antigen testing. While it's not perfect, it's a test that can be done very quickly and can be repeated quickly. We need to have rapid testing in community centers, churches. People should be able to do it at home. But I think that once this COVID-19 task force gets started, this testing infrastructure is going to be something they will have to pay special attention to and ramp up as soon as possible.
Are you concerned about this lack of transition communication that's happening and how that could impact the coronavirus, the next coronavirus task force that we could see with the Biden-Harris administration?
Absolutely. This task force needs access to current data, information from the FDA, CDC, from the current coronavirus task force. And what this will do will only delay the speed to which the Biden COVID-19 task force will be able to really get started on working to mitigate the spread of this virus.
Dr. Ujay Blackstock, great to have you with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica.
A programming note for you, Dr. Anthony Fauci will be on CNN State of the Union tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. right here on CNN. Jake Tapper will also be joined by Senator Bernie Sanders, Governor Mike DeWine, and Reverend Raphael Warnock.
Everyone could use a little comfort this holiday season, so wrap up a cozy Casper mattress and pillows. Soft percale sheets, even glow, our magical light for better sleep. Shop the Black Friday sale and save up to 30%.
My name is Sandy Marinese. I'm a professional.
You are. Yeah, it certainly is. And again, to be seen as this was really a Republican victory this election. I know everybody has their focus on the presidency, so Republicans can see that as a loss, and it was, but we made a ton of gains. And I think to take that situation that we have now and say, okay, we're going to turn around and win Georgia if you're a Democrat because we want to change America. I think Americans said, look, we don't want America necessarily fundamentally changed. Some do. What we wanted is a tone down of the rhetoric. We want people to get along. And I think that's a good message out of here. And what I hope is it's not going to happen before this election in January. But I hope that after that, everybody can maybe take inventory of the fact that, yeah, elections are always heated. But we ultimately, a lot of us are going to be here for a long time, we hope. And we have to own the country that we make today. And we've taught our kids, unfortunately, that the best way to succeed in politics is to yell and be divisive and try to get followers on Twitter and not to actually go have grown-up adult discussions. And that's what we have to take inventory of as we teach that next generation to basically take the torch of a country we're going to have to live in still.
Congressman, what do you expect? This is Jillian Turner. What do you expect from a Biden administration in terms of national security? What do you think? I know that you're not supportive of a lot of the president-elect's policies, but what do you think he's going to focus on? We all know where he is on China, on Russia. Do you think he's up to the job?
Well, I hope that on the China issue, once this rhetoric of the campaign subsides, he can take a lot of the good things the Trump administration has done and keep it going. I mean, if you think China is not, quite frankly, an enemy of the United States, and you haven't been paying attention. So we need to see a massive change from how it was under President Obama. It probably won't be exactly like President Trump did. But if we can even cut right down the middle, at least that's a progress. I'm worried that he's going to get right back into the Iran nuclear deal. We have Iran on the heels and some massively good things happening in the Middle East. But I think if you look at, is there anything positive, maybe kind of restoring the relationship in NATO will be good, but we have to hold NATO accountable to paying their fair share, as President Trump did a very apt job of pushing them to do. So, look, I'll go into any new administration open to working with them. I certainly hope we can. It's not going to be everything I like, but if it's anything like President Obama's tenure, it's unfortunately probably going to be a little combative.
Want to correct one thing while I have a second, which is it was David Perdue, the Senate candidate that I was quoting, not Sonny. My apologies there. David Perdue is running for Senate in the runoff election. Real quick, picking up on the foreign policy issue, is one of the things the Biden campaign, among others, are talking about. Bill Maher last night saying about how, foreign governments are congratulating Joe Biden and the Chinese are congratulating Joe Biden. Should we read something into who's excited about having a Joe Biden presidency and what countries seem to just sort of be giddy at the idea and what countries are perhaps not?
Maybe to an extent, but I think we overlook into some of that. I mean, did Putin, congratulate Trump? Or did he I think ultimately they're playing games with that too. And so if we actually perceive when a congratulations comes in as some kind of a future projection of foreign policy, they could be playing us as well. The reality is it looks like it's going to be President Biden's going to take over in January. And I hope he maintains a significant number of the policies President Trump has. But I don't think, when it comes to foreign leaders, the bottom line is we have to take American interests first. Sometimes that means working with a lot of these foreign leaders. And hopefully we can continue to do that. And I think the Republicans in Congress and hopefully the majority in the Senate will continue to press to hold them accountable.
Congressman, this is Jillian again. Joining us this afternoon. We will check back in with you next.
Hand recounted out of the 5 million ballots that were cast during the presidential election, Erica. So the Georgia Secretary of State, Brad.
We'll see where we are just a couple minutes from now.
I guess I voted against the other one, really.
All right, so the Trump campaign tweeted a few days ago and claimed that it was Mr. James Blaylock who voted illegally, even though he died back in 2006. He did not vote. Election officials confirmed that it was his wife, Mrs. James Blaylock, who you saw there, who voted on November 3rd, and she's been voting under her married name, Mrs. James Blaylock, for many years now. Erica, back to you.
Emma Walker with the latest for us.
You know, people like that lattes.
New great tasting Dalgalac soft juice works
Opportunistic throughout the day.
Commercials.
It's not complicated.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's beautiful out here this time of year. In the past 9 months, my administration has initiated the single greatest mobilization in U.S. history, pioneering, developing, and manufacturing therapies and vaccines in record time. Numbers like nobody's seen before. No medical breakthrough of this scope and magnitude has ever been achieved this rapidly, this quickly, and we're very proud of it, and I had tremendous help from the military, generals, admirals, and many of the great people at the White House. Operation Warp Speed is unequaled and unrivaled anywhere in the world, and leaders of other countries have called me to congratulate us on what we've been able to do, and we've helped many countries with their ventilators and all of the problems they were having, and I'd like to congratulate everyone involved in this effort. It's been an incredible effort. As a result of Operation Warp Speed, Pfizer announced on Monday that its China virus vaccine is more than 90% effective. This far exceeds any and all expectations. Nobody thought they'd get to that level.
You can too. Don't miss the deadline. Call now. It's free.
Which has 23% of the state's cases. NBC's Valerie Castro is joining us from El Paso, where despite those numbers, an appeal court
kind of reminded them of
to give you the boost that you're looking for. Just remember, at Rocket
to be provided by Pfizer free of charge. Pfizer said it wasn't part of Warp Speed, but that turned out to be a unfortunate misrepresentation. They are part. That's why we gave them the $1.95 billion, and it was an unfortunate mistake that they made when they said that. We will work to secure an emergency use authorization, which should be coming down extremely soon, and my administration will then coordinate the distribution of the vaccine, and it will be approved. I think, again, it will be approved very, very quickly, we hope. The average development timeline for the vaccine, including clinical tests and manufacturing, can take 8 to 12 years. Through Operation Warp Speed, we're doing it in less than 1 year. If you had a different administration with different people, what we've done would have taken, in my opinion, 3, 4, 5 years, and it would have been in the FDA forever. This is 5 times faster than the fastest prior vaccine development in history. 5 times faster. Say it again, 5 times faster. Nobody can believe it, actually. 3 other vaccines are also in the final stages of trial. They'll arrive within a few weeks, and they will also be mass-produced, and the delivery will be very rapid. We're ready to go. The vaccine.
Do not receive Botox Cosmetic if you have a skin infection. Side effects may...
You're hearing all sorts of chants that you've been hearing for the last 4 or 5 years from supporters of President Trump. There are a couple of counter-protesters, but to be honest, there hasn't been, at least downtown where we are, where the bulk of the Trump supporters are, there haven't been that many. There was a couple that was standing right around the corner.
Projects President-elect Joe Biden managed to flip 5 states President Trump carried in 2016, including the once reliably red state of Arizona. Biden, in fact, is the first step.
Reduce hospitalizations and deaths. Case levels are high, but a lot of the case levels are high because of the fact that we have the best testing program anywhere in the world. We've developed the most and the best tests, and we test far more than any other country, so it shows, obviously, more cases. By vaccinating the elderly and the high risk, we will effectively end this phase of the pandemic and allow seniors to reclaim their golden years, the golden years of their lives, which is so incredible. And it's about time that they can have those golden years. Again, this process is starting right away. Millions of doses will soon be going out the door. They're all ready, waiting for that final approval. As soon as April, the vaccine will be available to the entire general population, with the exception of places like New York State, where, for political reasons, the governor decided to say, and I don't think it's good politically, I think it's very bad from a health standpoint, but he wants to take his time on the vaccine. He doesn't trust where the vaccine's coming from. These are coming from the greatest companies anywhere in the world, greatest labs in the world, but he doesn't trust the fact that it's this White House, this administration. So we won't be delivering it to New York until we have authorization to do so, and that pains me to say that. This is a very successful, amazing vaccine at 90% and more. But so the Governor Cuomo, will have to let us know when he's ready for it. Otherwise, we can't be delivering it to a state that won't be giving it to its people immediately. And I know the people of New York very well. I know they want it. So the governor will let us know when he's ready. He's had some very bad editorials recently about this statement and what's happened with respect to nursing homes and his handling of nursing homes. And I hope he doesn't handle this as badly as he's handled the nursing homes. But we're ready to provide it as soon as they let us know that they'll actually use it. And again, it's a very safe and a great vaccine. Already we have among the lowest case fatality rates our country anywhere in the world.
January 5th. Young, thank you. Peaceful transfers of power are a cornerstone, of course, of the American political establishment. Right now, though, in 2020, it's simply not happening. President Trump is still refusing to concede to President.
In between. As for the wall, look, I think what matters is that, there's some areas that I think we can all agree on. Number one, we should not be tearing through tribal land and ancestral lands of some of these tribes to build a wall in the middle of the desert that isn't really going to be helpful.
Going back to Memorial Day and the killing of George Floyd, you've covered most of these, everything from Black Lives Matter to Supreme Court rallies. So reading the crowd right now, I mean, what we're seeing, folks look fairly happy-go-lucky, but as we have seen over the course of the summer and then the fall, a lot of these protests seem good during the day, and they kind of go pear-shaped as things go on and we come to evening. Do you get the sense that some of this energy is getting more and more frenzied, or do you get the sense that people are keeping it together?
It's tough whenever you are in these types of protest settings, and both you guys know this, you both covered it before. A lot of times things can go sideways very quickly.
That our frontline workers have all the tools they need. My administration's invoked the Defense Production Act and related authorities over 100 times and have made a historic investment into our industrial base. All states that requested PPE from the federal government have received the PPE almost immediately upon request. Every American who needed a ventilator has had access to a ventilator. Think of that. Very complicated piece of equipment, very expensive. And we haven't had one person in this whole country that has requested or needed a ventilator that hasn't had it. Every single request has been immediately filled. So that was something that was a great job. And now we're helping the rest of the world with ventilators because it's a very hard thing. We're producing them thousands of ventilators a month. The federal government has 22,000 beds immediately available for states and jurisdictions that need additional capacity. But we think that it's going to start going down, possibly very quickly. We'll see what happens. But with the vaccine, you'll see numbers going down within a matter of months, and they'll go down very rapidly. As we continue to combat the virus, our economy is rebounding far beyond any expectations. I see the stock market's up almost 400 points today again, and it's ready to break the all-time record. Our jobs records are incredible. The job numbers are incredible. In the last 6 months, we've created over 13 million jobs and slashed the unemployment rate by more than half. Last quarter, we witnessed the fastest economic growth ever recorded in the history of our country, 33.
A few, to your point, at night sometimes when things go pear-shaped, and they have in a number of cities, but I've never seen a large pro-Trump demonstration like this go pear-shaped. Well, in a significant way, and I think there's an importance here that at least the time that I've spent out in these rallies, there's a very different feel to them than the anger perhaps that you see, and we've seen
the MAGA rallies. You mean?
Yeah, there's a very different feel if you go to a MAGA rally or a pro-Trump protest like this and the like. The feeling and the level of vitriol is very different, and it's a much more positive festival-like atmosphere. And I'm generalizing here.
Yeah.
Than the times that I was on the ground, for example, in Philadelphia, when there's real looting and rioting and violence.
Right.
That really has not been a hallmark of these rallies. It's been a hallmark of rallies, protests, riots, call it whatever you want on the other side. The one thing that I've been able to ascertain.
Never been more important. Turn to Rocket Mortgage.
Donald Trump, unless something dramatically changes within the mainstream Republican Party, even as he steps out of office, as is currently scheduled and planned for early next year, he's not going away. He's going to still want to be, in many respects, a kingmaker in the GOP. He's going to far and away be the most popular person.
Any circumstances will not go to a lockdown, but we'll be very vigilant, very careful. We understand the disease. It's a complicated disease, but we understand it very well. We ask all Americans to remain vigilant, especially as the weather gets colder and it becomes more difficult to go outside and to have outside gatherings. And with that, I just want to ask some very talented people to come up and say a few words. General Perna and Dr. Slawi have been incredible. The general is really getting started right now, but he's really, what we don't know or what people don't know, he started putting this all together 6 months ago, and you're going to see some real action. So, General, maybe you'll start it off, and then, Doctor, you'll go right after that. Thank you very much, and then we're going to finish it off with Mike Pence. Okay? Thank you, please. Thank you, sure.
Thank you, Mr. President. Hi, everybody. So Operation Warp Speed's mission is to enable and accelerate the development of vaccines and therapeutics to help control the COVID-19 pandemic and save lives. On May 15th, almost 6 months ago to the day, we stated the goal of the operation, which was to have vaccines and therapeutics available and approved for use in the US population by the end of the year 2020. We said then that while very challenging, the goal was credible and therefore was worth trying with the best, our best to achieve it. Today we're almost 6 months later, and I think we can say that significant progress has been made. And while we are not there yet, we are close to the objective. Let me share with you some facts. If I look at the vaccine side, we've selected a portfolio of 6 vaccines using 3 different platform technologies, and we elected to have 2 vaccines from each platform technology. First platform is what's called messenger RNA, and 2 vaccines using that platform were in the portfolio, one by Pfizer and one by Moderna. The second platform is using what's called live viral vectors, and we had 1 vaccine from J&J and 1 vaccine from AstraZeneca in partnership with Oxford University. And the third platform was the recombinant protein platform with 1 vaccine from a biotech company here in the US called Novavax.
Also be eligible for a plan that includes additional benefits.
Remember where we were when it happened.
Joy is spontaneously breaking out all over America right now.
How we felt, who we were.
Reactions have occurred. Tell your doctor if you've been someplace where fungal infection.
Enrollment in the phase 3 trial, and one of the 2 has announced on Monday to, I think, thrilling information that they had 90% efficacy. That was the Pfizer vaccine, demonstrating that vaccination is possible against COVID-19, that the kind of choices we have made in terms of the antigen selected was effective, and made us optimistic that other vaccine may also be effective. On Wednesday, the same week, just this Wednesday, Moderna, the other company with the vaccine using similar platform technology, messenger RNA, announced that they have achieved the number of cases in their trial to allow for first interim analysis, and I would expect that shortly, probably next week, we may hear what I hope to be another very good information regarding an efficacious vaccine. The two other vaccines that are in phase 3 trial that are using the live vector platform, the J&J vaccine and the AstraZeneca vaccine, have recruited already a few thousand subjects in their trials. I would like to take this opportunity to invite as many Americans as possible who would like to volunteer to participate in these clinical trials, as that's the only way we are able to achieve a demonstration of the safety and the efficacy of these vaccines. The last two vaccines, the recombinant protein vaccines, are planned to
rated companies to find you the company with the best in his mind. That's the closest thing that even comes to mind here from history.
Wow. So this is very much exclusive, a concern about Donald Trump. Let me, though, read this, and it's from Jack Goldsmith. He ran the George W. Bush Office of Legal Counsel, and he says, quote, a knowledgeable and informed president with Trump's personality characteristics, including lack of self-discipline, would be a disaster. The only saving grace here is that he hasn't been paying attention. Does this, David, make the security threat concerns any less acute for you?
Slightly, and it's the flip side of what some of us have been talking about for nearly 4 years now, which is a president who has not seemed that interested in reading his president's daily brief and other top-level documents. That
in sight at this point. CNN's Matt Egan joins us now. So Matt, you wrote this week about how even a vaccine, of course, can't replace stimulus. President Trump tweeted on the need for a deal earlier, telling Congress it was time. But realistically, what's the hope at this point for any sort of progress in this lame duck period?
And another 25 to 30 million per month on an ongoing basis from there on. And as of the month of February or March, if we have more vaccines approved, such as the live vectored vaccine, we may be able to immunize a larger number of Americans on an ongoing basis per month. Operation Warp Speed didn't only focus on vaccines. We also looked at therapeutics, and we have...
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to be a part of the festival again.
If we look forward a little bit, though, what does this mean? We've never seen anything like this. You have somebody who is, depending on how you look at it, either has lost the election or is down a significant amount with not much room to make up in the election, and you get tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people who are flying from around the country to rally in support of him. What does that bode for the MAGA movement, for President Trump's legacy, for the Georgia Senate races? Pick your issue.
Closure. Without that, I think it would just be a measure of his personality and his disgruntlement. But the fact is, he has a history of treating classified information differently than his predecessors did.
I do remember being absolutely shocked by the Mar-a-Lago pictures when he was entertaining President Xi, and people very nearby just...
I spoke just this week to a woman in Jersey City, New Jersey, who is a career bartender, and she's been out of work since March. So has her husband. And she's...
use authorization before the end of this year. I think it's a remarkable achievement within a period of 6 to 7 months. It is important to note that this progress has been achieved without any political interference. I said it many times. And at every step has been and is being judged by independent expert bodies, whether it's when the FDA grants the green light to go into clinical trials, or whether when the data safety monitoring boards review the safety of the studies on an on...
That fact, yes, this president did better with minorities than any GOP candidate did in 60 years. So you have a president who has just been lied about repeatedly by the left, lied about by many people in the media, yet people still turned out to support this president in rejection of those false narratives that have been driven for years about this president, and they saw past that, which one, I think shows that the grip of establishment entities in this country, they're sort of losing that grip on the American people. And two, it's a demonstration that this president did a lot for, over 70 million Americans and followed through on the things he said that he would do, which simply doesn't happen in politics. And you guys know that. I know that as someone who's worked in politics.
It is still going strong.
That there are real economic consequences here to this messy transition, Erica.
That there are. Matt Egan, great to see you today. Thank you.
Thank you.
A review of the data transparently and available to everybody to look into before the FDA then make its decision to either authorize a vaccine or not authorize it. On that basis, I personally feel very comfortable to say that the vaccines and the therapeutics that we have helped develop and accelerate will be judged independently, and if approved, should be used by all in the population. Because I believe vaccination is likely to be the cornerstone among all the other measures that we have to take to help us really control this pandemic. I will now pass to my co-leader, General Perna, who will tell you more about the support that the operation has provided to manufacturing of the vaccine and also to their distribution. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, thank you for allowing me to continue service of our great nation as the co-leader with Dr. Moncef Slaoui on this mission. Let me start by emphasizing for me, what is Operational Warp Speed about? It is about saving lives. And it is a Herculean task that the President put us on many months ago. And as Dr. Slaoui just laid out, we are making steady progress and we are ready to execute. Through the whole of American approach, we have leveraged the best of nation in federal government, local, states, industry, and academia to expand the capacity and capability to achieve our mission. It has been powerful. We have capitalized on the best contracting, logistics, and planning experts available to synchronize and integrate all phases of the operation, from development of the vaccine, manufacturing of the vaccine, and finally distribution of the vaccine. 6 months ago, the capacity did not exist in our nation's pharmaceutical production base. We went to work building brick and mortar manufacturing facilities, bringing in the right specialized machinery and equipment, and prioritizing supply chain materials through the Defense Production Act. Today, we expect to have tens of millions of doses immediately following EUA, and we will distribute them as soon
off at Menards.
Save big money at Menards.
Picking up, and what people were telling me on the ground has to do with this flourishing belief in conspiracy theories that is related to a distrust in institutions that would make some voters not respond to polls.
Yeah, which is why we kept having you on, because you were giving us a very real consensus of what you'd heard, and it was very much different than what the polls were telling us. So we appreciated that reporting. Why do you think, though, that there's a rationale for people perhaps not telling the truth? I mean, wouldn't they want to support their candidate and show support when asked by pollsters what they're thinking?
I think there's a couple things at play here. First of all, I think that it's possible that pollsters were, that the pandemic actually caused pollsters to reach a specific group of people who were in their homes because they believed the virus was real.
It is the partnerships we have formed with the pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer and Moderna, distribution companies like McKesson, FedEx, and UPS, and pharmacies like CVS and Walgreens that have agreed to do things differently, to think, how can we get this to the American people in the most rapid and expeditious way? We will be successful because of this all of America approach, this collaboration, this effort that everybody is leading towards. I will end where I started. This is about saving lives, the lives of the great American people. And we will not rest until we are successful and that we have irreversible momentum to returning our nation back to normal. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, General, very much. Great job. Alex, please.
Thank you, Mr. President, for providing the leadership that's gotten us where we are today. The success that Operation Warp Speed has realized so far has been made possible only because of the bold vision you announced not even 6 months ago, right here in the Rose Garden. To highlight 3 of the remarkable accomplishments we've seen just this week. First, Pfizer announced very promising data on its vaccine candidate. Second, the FDA authorized and we have begun to distribute and administer Eli Lilly's monoclonal antibody to help them.
Disturbances over the past couple of years. Real question though, does this prove that this is now and forevermore, or at least for the foreseeable future, the party of Donald Trump?
I believe that Donald Trump has added to the Republican Party just as Lincoln did and Reagan did, and Goldwater did. And these are lasting. People still mark each of those historical figures in a very special way. And so I think when you take the party of Reagan and you add Lincoln and then you add Trump, you get our party.
Wow, that is high cotton, as they say where I come from, to put the current president with Reagan and with Lincoln. Congressman Darrell Issa, former congressman, soon to be congressman. We appreciate it, sir. And this rally was supposed to go from noon to 2, Jillian, but I think it's going to continue on, as will our coverage.
I don't think any of these folks are going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah. Came from all over the country. Coverage continues from New York in just a minute.
You've never been in better
TV to watch TV. Now you can watch on your.
Our completely unprecedented partnership with the Defense Department has given us a comprehensive public-private plan for distribution and helped each Operation Warp Speed vaccine maker secure what they needed for manufacturing, including Pfizer's ongoing production this week. Operation Warp Speed has always had one goal: saving lives. The President has given OWS the independence it needs to achieve that goal and ensure that we're following the procedures that Americans expect for any medical product they take. At every step, ensuring patient safety has been our top priority. This process has been driven solely by science and data. So it's a shame that some, one example being the governor of New York, have actually injected politics into the process and suggested the possibility of intentionally delaying access to an FDA-authorized vaccine, which is simply unconscionable. Because the President has delivered the full funding we need, the best people on the planet, and real independence for this project, Operation Warp Speed is doing something that's never been done before in history. This success means there's light at the end of the tunnel. Right now is not the time to let our guard down. We continue to encourage Americans to follow the 3 W's. Wash your hands, watch your distance, wear a mask when you can't watch your distance, and avoid settings where you can't do those things. Because of the incredible American spirit, because of what great scientists and public servants and innovators have done through Operation Warp Speed, we have such a bright future ahead of us. If we continue to protect ourselves, our families, and our communities, then I firmly believe that.
Including an AARP Medicare Advantage.
The full benefits of turmeric. Quinol is the turmeric.
While the vice president tried to help his son, the son tried to help his father.
I absolutely believe, and I'll believe it till the day I die, that the thing that Bo was most afraid of was not dying.
E6 were tied at the top.
I was grateful to just have a few minutes today to commend the team of Operation Warp Speed. It was your vision that we could harness the ingenuity and the creativity of America's greatest pharmaceutical and research companies to speed in record time a vaccine that would save American lives. You told the American people that we would have a vaccine before the end of the year, and some scoffed at that timetable. But I can tell you the team on Operation Warp Speed didn't. These great research companies didn't. And as you've articulated here, Mr. President, the American people can be comforted with all the news this week that help is on the way. That literally pending FDA approval, of the Pfizer vaccine, and perhaps very soon, another vaccine that will be submitted by Moderna and even other companies that before the year is out, we'll be able to administer a vaccine to tens of millions of Americans, as you've said, Mr. President, beginning with those most vulnerable, beginning with our seniors all across this country, beginning with our healthcare workers and first responders at the point of the need. It is an unprecedented medical mobilization, the greatest in the history of our country, and I join you in commending this team. Let me also say, Mr. President, that the White House Coronavirus Task Force will be meeting with our nation's governors in our regular conference call this Monday. We'll be reviewing with them the progress on the development of a vaccine, our plans for distribution, but we'll also be reviewing each and every state's specific plans for distributing the vaccine. Continue to urge governors to have those plans developed and prepared and ready for immediate implementation. And finally, Mr. President, as we see cases rising around the country, as we see hospitalizations rising around the country, I want to encourage the American people with the news that as we have done from the very beginning, we're going to continue to move heaven and earth to make sure that your family has access to the level of health care that we'd want any one of our members of our family to have. I spoke to FEMA today, and as we heard reported at our last task force meeting, Mr. President, we're receiving requests from states for PPE, for personnel, but we're meeting all of those requests.
Reported on Friday. That's the 5th straight day of record-breaking case counts. Also breaking records, hospitalizations, and hospitals are being stretched thin. More than 68,000 people were hospitalized with coronavirus on Friday. Again, that is also a new high. And the rapid rise in cases, in hospitalizations, well, that's forcing some states to crack down again. In New Mexico, the governor order agree with the results of the election. So this group, they will end up, we expect, at the Supreme Court, but there are still a lot of people that we have seen staying put at Freedom Plaza. You can see some of the signs. If we look kind of around here, this looks like this is actually a counter-protester walking within the Trump group right there. That sign that says, "When will Trump concede?" Not a whole lot of those folks out. We did see a small group of counter-protesters earlier in the day come to Freedom Plaza. They were very...
Cost lives, and they cost a lot of problems. The cure cannot be, you got to remember, cannot be worse than the problem itself. This administration will not go, under any circumstances, will not go to a lockdown, but will be very vigilant, very careful.
All across America, we encourage every American, as the Secretary did and as you have, continue to practice good hygiene, wash your hands, practice social distancing, wear a mask when that's not possible. We all have a role to play. We all know what to do to protect the vulnerable, to look after our families and our neighbors and friends. And we encourage every American, with all the good news this week, to continue to be persistent in putting the health of yourself, your family, your neighbors, co-workers, and friends first. And we'll get through this, and we'll get through this together. Thank you, Mr. President.
Turn around. Governor Burgum is now imposing a...
Are wearing masks. What kind of percentage are you seeing?
Maybe 10%, if that. I think that's probably a generous estimate. You know, anytime we're out covering these protests, always the thing that you feel...
From several different speakers, including conspiracy theorist in chief Alex Jones, who ranted about Democrats calling them all sorts of names, including calling them Nazis, which of course they are not, and basically saying that this is a revolution and egging on the crowd to try and overturn the government, but of course not the Trump government, saying that they believe that Trump will get 4 more years.
Well, certainly the people who are thronging to the streets of Washington, D.C. today to show support for the president are taking it very seriously. And as the president returns from his game of golf today, he will be surrounded on all sides of the White House by people egging him on in this fight, including just behind me here in Lafayette Square. Now, what we're hearing from a person close to President Trump and familiar with these discussions is that while the president is not likely to ever come out and say he lost the election, that it is likely that if the election results are certified in Joe Biden's favor, that once that occurs, that President Trump would then announce plans very quickly to likely run in 2024 again, which would both freeze the potential GOP field for 2024, but also create a situation in which the president could continue building support, continue to sort of put himself out there as a candidate for the country, even while the reality moves forward that he's not going to be in office the next 4 years, and that at least this term of the presidency will have drawn to a close. And you can already see some signs, Alex, from President Trump that he's seeking to put a better veneer onto what he has been able to accomplish over the last 4 years, particularly when it comes to his administration's response to coronavirus, which has been so widely criticized by public health professionals. But the president yesterday, as he was speaking really for the first time publicly in about a week, touting the quick nature in which they were able to develop this vaccine and explaining how it's very quickly by April going to be made available in all 50 states with one notable exception.
As soon as April, the vaccine will be available to the entire general population, with the exception of places like New York State, where, for political reasons, the governor decided to say, and I don't think it's good.
And learning as early as Monday, the city's infection rate inching closer to that 3% threshold to close down classrooms. By the way, children and students not mentioned among the groups that would get the vaccine first in that Rose Garden speech yesterday. By the way, Eric, Cuomo is having this emergency summit right now throughout the weekend with the other governors of the northeastern neighboring states to make sure they're all on the same page with all these new restrictions in place and new policies in place, because what they don't want to see happening is that people get in their car and drive across the border and do whatever they want in another state. Eric?
And we don't want a repeat of the horrendous months of infections in March, April, and May. Aisha, thank you. Martha?
No, we do not. Right now, Eric, we're going to take a live look at the nation's capital, where tens of thousands of supporters for President Trump, well, they're holding several simultaneous rallies as the president's legal team remains busy with challenging voting in several key states. Those legal efforts, though, hit with setbacks in Arizona, Michigan, and Pennsylvania yesterday alone. And we're going to take you to the rally live in a bit, in a moment from here. But right now, I want to go to David Spunt. David Spunt is live at the White House. So, David, are we hearing anything from the White House today?
Well, as far as today is concerned, you heard White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany. She's also apparently a Trump campaign advisor, saying that these legal battles continue in several different states, although it's really hard to pinpoint how many cases are going on in different states, because oftentimes some are filed, then those legal challenges are retracted, or they're shot down just about a day or so later. But President Trump is golfing right now at his Northern Virginia club. He left this morning. Beautiful day in Washington, D.C., but he is refusing to concede at this point. We do know that there are still many legal challenges that he is fighting in court in some of those cases, in some of those states that you mentioned, specifically in Pennsylvania, pushing ahead with an attempt to block results from being certified in the Keystone State, although results will be certified, Arthel, on November 23rd. The campaign experienced 3 blows in Pennsylvania courts, all dealing with the counting of ballots. Now, the Secretary of the Commonwealth, Kathy Boockvar, out with a bit of news. She will not order a recount or recanvass because President-elect Biden's lead was so significant. Last week, Attorney General Bill Barr put out a memo telling U.S. attorneys across the country to monitor and report report any substantial irregularities with ballots. But the Washington Post reporting that 16 attorneys charged with monitoring irregularities found nothing substantial that would show any type of irregularities or any type of concern. The Trump administration continues to block a transition to the incoming Biden team. You see former White House Chief of Staff and four-star Marine General John Kelly, who's saying that blocking a transition with the Biden team could hurt our national security, and Democrats are outraged.
We currently have a president who refuses to concede and allow for a peaceful transition to happen. The Biden-Harris administration doesn't have the opportunity even to try to start that transition. And so Republicans really are part of a party that is enabling this president who's not only humiliating himself, but humiliating our country.
And granted, you have heard from some Republicans, Mitt Romney and Pat Toomey, the outgoing senator in Pennsylvania, who announced that he would not be running for re-election. But Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, some of those senior Republicans in leadership have not yet admitted defeat for President Trump at this point. But ultimately,
it's not just the certification from the GSA. They also would like to see some level of coordination on the coronavirus as we enter these months where scientists predict there will be a dramatic spike in cases across the country.
Abby, with regard to today, the president took that deliberate loop around Freedom Plaza, around the rally before heading out to the golf links. Of course, the pro-Trump demonstrations have gathered there. But is this a nod to his supporters' ongoing dissent?
You know, it reminds me of when he took the loop around the hospital when he had COVID at Walt. And it's just, I look at this as a resident of Washington, D.C., and I think about last week when Joe Biden was declared the winner, and everyone who was down in that same place was wearing a mask. And I just see all of these people without masks in a city, and it just looks very concerning regarding the pandemic. But I think Trump probably just likes to see the crowds. We will see in the coming days if he backs off of the idea that he's going to have a second term. But this feels very, very in flux.
So what do you think, Daniel? Is it just that seeing the crowds, it just makes Donald Trump feel better in the wake of the loss, which he has yet to officially acknowledge, but...
He's always really liked being the center of a large crowd and a large gathering. And to an extent, this Million MAGA March is supposed to be a refutation or a sort of analogous event to the massive gatherings after Trump was first elected in defiance of his presidency. And I think that's what the point of this is here. I am both surprised and unsurprised about the president taking a little figurative stroll through the crowds. He loves seeing his supporters, he loves hearing the cheering, and he loves being able to say afterwards, I was in these crowds and I saw millions and millions of people, or whatever he'll say about this. And I think that's what's really behind this. But truthfully, Alex, I think this is yet another sign that he knows that the days of his presidency are coming to an end.
Interesting. Well, to that point then, Abby, what do you make of Donald Trump?
Thing is, we can only flex so much. I mean, the walls of the hospital are what they are. The workforce is what it is. And the numbers of COVID cases are just galloping out of control. And we're seeing, like we knew we would, at a slight delay, we're really seeing exponential rise in the hospitalizations. And then, following that will be deaths as well. And so, it's just going to be incredibly challenging going into this winter. We haven't really had flu hit yet, so there are going to be other factors that play into COVID. It's not just COVID, it's all the other patients that we're trying to take care of as well, who will receive compromised care because there's only so much we can do. And of course, as hospitals get crowded, our staff will get sick as well, which will really reduce our ability to provide care. So it's not just bed count. It's sort of what we're able to do with our hospital staff and really just an explosion of patients.
As I heard one doctor say yesterday, it's not just about having the beds, it's about having the staff there to help the patients in those beds. You know, we look at what's happening around the country too, local officials, whether it be like the city of Chicago as we saw, or even in Oregon where you are, we are seeing new restrictions being put in place. We are seeing different measures be added. How effective do you think those are at this point when we are also dealing with not just the virus, but we're dealing with virus fatigue?
That's exactly right. And I think the difference now is that we're really trying to acknowledge that. I mean, there is no question that these are difficult decisions. They're not easily made. On the health side as well, we are really wanting people to know that their economic prosperity is part of their health, and we appreciate that. It is completely part of the calculus, and at every step, you know, even public health officials have been criticized sometimes for not being strong enough. But we're trying to work with people because as their businesses suffer, they suffer too. And so, you know, here in Oregon just yesterday, our governor announced a 2-week freeze where we are closing a lot of businesses. Places like gyms and indoor venues and pools are being shut down right now. Also, you know, restaurants and bars are going to take out only. We're restricting numbers of indoor gatherings at places like churches. But I want to emphasize too, this time around, we're also really being careful about what gets to stay open. You know, schools that are open, for the most part, get to stay open, and we're not changing restrictions around that. Youth sports programs, those are staying in place. So we're trying to be a little bit more nimble and allowing people to do things that for the most part have been shown to be safe and are so important for people's well-being in this time, because it's exhausting to not do things like see people and exercise. So we're trying to be a little smarter to allow for things that will sustain people in this period. You know, places that can do the 2-week freeze and then go back will be great. There are some places like where we are that might need to be a little bit longer.
I want to get your take really quickly on this.
Become so politicized?
Well, that's an important question, but also sad that you have to ask that question, because that is what we have seen a lot in the United States, but not just restricted to the United States, because we're also seeing it with my colleagues in the UK and in Europe and in other regions of the world. I don't think there's a simple explanation for it, but I think there has been an anti-authority component to this. You know, we had anti-vax. People don't like to be told to be vaccinated. Scientists are often perceived as authoritarian, and sometimes, in fact, they've made that perception themselves by the way they act. I think we can improve on that. But right now, it has been just lumped into the politics of what's going on. We live in a divisive society, and even if we didn't have a pandemic, it would be a divisive society. And the fact that we do have a pandemic, and a pandemic is a public health issue, and public health is intimately related to science, that all of a sudden science gets caught in a lot of this divisiveness. And that's unfortunate. And what we as scientists hope, I know that my colleague Francis Collins feels the same way, that when we get past this, science will resume its really rightful place in being something that's for everyone without divisions.
Will we get past this, meaning COVID-19, or will
Yes,
we get
no,
past this?
COVID-19. I think when we get out of the charged nature of the stress and the strain that's put upon us by an outbreak, people will realize the importance of science.
So let's talk about where we are now. I mean,
We're more than just a cable company. We have a 2020 Cadillac XT4, XT5, and XT6.
Governor yesterday, people on social media said, I had plans and I just changed them. People will do what you show them you're doing, not just what you tell them to do. So everyone in the public eye needs to be the best example they can be. That was certainly a disappointing moment, and we want consistency in message and in action from here on.
Once again, as we know, actions often speak louder than words. Dr. Esther Chu, really good to have you with us today. Thank you for your insight and for your expertise.
Thanks so much.
Amen.
Look what's happening. That's the bad news. I think the encouraging news that people need to understand, that public health measures, not lockdown of the country, but public health measures that are rather simple and easy to understand, the universal wearing of masks, the physical distancing, the avoiding congregate and crowded places, outdoors better than indoors, washing hands. It sounds
simple in the context of this ominous outbreak. But in fact, it can turn it around, and that's what we really need to do.
So to be at this level now of this new spike, is that just a lethal pandemic kind of working its way through the country, through the world, or are we doing something just horribly wrong to be at that place again?
Well, I wouldn't say it's horribly wrong. I think what we have not done, and it isn't just the United States, I think if you look at what's going on in Europe and the UK now, they are in many respects in the same boat as we are with major surges. But would you look at what happened in our own country, that we did not act in a unified way. I always say one of the wonderful things about our country that I love so much is that we're the United States of America, and we're a federalist country, and we have states independence, and they have, in some respects, important that they are that way. However, when you're dealing with an infectious disease, the infectious disease doesn't know the difference of the border between Mississippi and Louisiana, or between Florida and Georgia and South Carolina. And an infectious disease means the entire country. We did not approach it that way. We had too much individual approaches towards how we were going to handle the outbreak. So our baseline never came down to the low level that we wanted it to be. So when community spread came in as we try to open the country, it just soared right up. And it's a self-propagating issue, because the more community spread you get, the more difficult it is to contain it by identification, isolation, and contact tracing. Because there's so much of it going on, it becomes very difficult. That's the problem we're in right now. We have an enormous amount of community spread.
So if your model was telling you a while back that we could have 100,000 cases a day, what is it telling you now? As you look forward to the winter, cold weather, what are we facing?
Well, models are as good as the assumption you put into the model. I have been one to challenge models, not challenge the validity of the modeling process, but to challenge the assumptions that are put into it. If we all literally pushed together as a group and did it in a uniform way, we do not necessarily need to see the 1,000 to 1,300 deaths per day. We don't need to see the 140,000 infections per day. We can turn it around. So if we stay the way we are, you do the simple math. 1,000 deaths a day, 140,000 cases a day, you multiply it by 31 days in December, 2 weeks more left in November. By the time you get to January 1st, we have a really, really bad situation. So what I'm saying as a public health official, and as my colleagues say, we don't need to accept that. And I want to make one point, if I may, that's important. I know you're going to get to it in the questions. But one of the things about a vaccine, which is really important, not only in and of itself as being a tool that's essential to end this outbreak, when people know that help is on the way, and what I mean by help is on the way is that we will start giving vaccines in December. And then as we get into January, February, March, we'll get the prioritization of the people who need it the most. If we can focus that is there's light at the end of the tunnel, I hope we can get over what we call COVID fatigue, where people are so exhausted with the public health measures that they really feel like they almost want to either give up and say, let's do what you want to do, which is not the time to do that now. Now we need to double down on the public health measures as we're waiting for the vaccine to come and help us out.
So there's COVID fatigue and there's COVID resistance, or resistance to taking the measures you're talking about. Is there, in your mind, is there hard data, hard evidence that...
How does this break, or what would be the breakthrough? Would it be the certification of the election finally, in order for them to walk in and not have an empty office, not even know where the computers are, or have nothing?
Eric, this is partly the president's whim, and you talk to people around the president, as you know, the people around the president all think that it's over. They do not see the result changing. The question is getting the president there. Could the certification be that? That's one milestone that people have put out there. I think it's going to happen sooner rather than later. The president's made his point. I think he will feel good. After this rally, I looked because I'm in Arlington, Virginia. I can look right across the bridge into into Georgetown and into some of the action in D.C. But that's going to be up to the president. But in the meantime, you see the office of the president-elect, as we see the Joe Biden branding continuing with business. They're going to keep up a drumbeat of appointments, showing us the COVID briefings, telling us about the other briefings he's getting, putting out readouts of calls that they're getting from world leader, all sending that "we got this" message.
And we're looking right now, in fact, on the left of the screen, the viewers can see the rally in Washington. The Trump supporters certainly very passionate, have a variety of issues from supporting the president and his agenda to others saying they believe that the election is stolen. You've got that hashtag Stop the Steal. You've constantly reported that officials say there's no evidence of that, and that is not true. Could this present a danger eventually to our democracy, to the faith of the credibility and integrity of the election system, if this continues in this way without any proof of evidence or unless something comes up?
Well, Eric, you said it. A massive problem for America is the lack of trust in institutions. That includes government, that includes the church, that includes the media for sure. And there's no chance of any of that healing as long as this goes on. And that's the long-term damage potentially from what the president is doing, and I think potentially to the Republican Party. I've talked to Republican Party leaders about this. I've said to them, you're going to be in office a long time after President Trump is. The Republican Party is going to long outlast all of us. Aren't you concerned about that? So that's what somebody's going to have to convince the president of. The president isn't a long-term thinker. They're going to have to convince him that it's in his own interest, and that is what he responds to. Like, what is in his interest to
just say we just saw a very disturbing sign. It said, "Coming for blacks and Indians, welcome to the New World Order." I mean, who the hell knows, what people have and what they say on these things? But what do the Republicans tell you? When does the president start to perhaps give a different message? While others think he will never concede or will never give another type of message. And what do you say to the viewers watching you right now who think that there is something wrong, that this election was stolen, that there was fraud, and that their guy got roped?
Yeah, no, Eric, that's a very fair question and a two-part answer. What they say, I interviewed the House Republican leader, Kevin McCarthy, for Axios on HBO. He told me on camera that the president would concede, and I said graciously. He didn't necessarily co-sign to that, but he said that when the time comes, he says this is a democracy, the president will concede. To the people who feel that the election was stolen or that there were improprieties, I would say to them that look at how other Republicans, look at how other leaders have handled this in the past. You look at the 2016 election, which was even closer than this, you can argue, but Democrats didn't resist or didn't claim that it had been stolen. They moved on. They came back to fight and to win, and that's how the system works. And so I would ask people to step beyond this moment and think about how they would apply this set of facts to other things in their life, to look at the reality, to look at the math, look at the history of recounts only changing 400, 500 on average vote when there's tens of thousands of votes that need to be changed here. And so the question is, can those energies be redirected to what's next rather than to what's past?
Our very American democracy has survived for so long, and we will continue. Mike Allen of Axios. Mike, always good to see you. Keep an eye on all those folks in Washington. Thank you.
Eric, thanks for your coverage.
Barthel?
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Eric. Well, while we cannot underscore the severity of the coronavirus pandemic enough, right now there is some good news on the vaccine front. The one company that says its vaccine is 90% effective, plus when you might have access to a shot.
Is it go?
So would that happen in December, as has been reported? This first priority group, you think they will see the vaccine to be administered to them? Who are those people that will get it?
Yeah, so I do think that the healthcare workers that are on the front line, so you're going to see those, ICU physicians, nurses, doctors, anyone that is, working on the front lines is going to have priority access to the vaccine, along with our first responders, along with those that are working in vulnerable populations like nursing homes. So that's going to be the first priority group, along with individuals that have comorbidities. And then you're going to move on from there in terms of the general population. So that's not going to happen until sometime in 2021. It's going to take time from, actually having the vaccine and then putting it into individuals' arms. The operation component to it is going to be a huge logistical lift for all healthcare systems around the United States.
Absolutely. Dr. Sarah Madad, please come see me again. I appreciate your insights and expertise. Slipping majority, why Democrats ended up losing seats in the House this year, and could their edge there be in danger the next time around?
You love your pet.
It's going to be a very transparent process. I don't think people who are anti-vax fully appreciate how transparent that process is. They may think there's something that's being hidden, people are trying to put something over on them. We need to reach out to them and make them realize that that's not the case. And it's to their benefit and the benefit of society to get vaccinated.
So if 50% of the population, or some, maybe not that many, but a large chunk of people do not take the vaccination, what does that mean? How does that play out? What does that mean for me if I take, what does the world look like?
I think that would be quite problematic. And it would not be good for the country in general, because if you really want to essentially crush, as that word they use, an outbreak, to get the level of transmission so low that it is no longer a public health problem. If you have 50% of the people don't get vaccinated, there's a lot of infection that's going to be going around the community. If you get a 90-95% effective vaccine and 80% of the population get vaccinated, you have an umbrella of protection already that the virus has no place to go. It would be looking for vulnerable people and not finding it. That's when it goes way down, and then it's no longer a threat. Now, if 50% of the people don't want to get vaccinated, it's going to take quite a while to get to that point.
So COVID-19 seems to be mutating in, concerning ways. Is there anything that we do not know yet about COVID-19, that, a mystery that I don't know, that either continues to surprise you or that we need to unlock?
Yeah, let me count the ways. It is a lot of that we don't know, and I think we have to be humble that we have learned an extraordinary amount over the last 10 months, but there's a lot that we do not know, and that's the reason why the studies, the cohorts, the research that we're going to be doing is going to go on for quite a while, even after we have the outbreak under control.
Yeah. So we actually solicited questions from viewers, and a lot of them were about, I've had COVID. Am I safe? Both for myself and in terms of infecting anybody else. I have the antibodies. Am I safe? What do we think about those questions now?
Well, at this point in time, we do not know the durability of protection. We know that if you get infected and recover, it is very likely for a finite period of time that you are protected. It's almost certain that that's the case. We've already seen specific instances of reinfection. People who were infected, recovered, and got infected with another SARS-CoV-2. We don't know how extensive that's going to be. So even though antibodies are present in a lot of the people who recover, we don't know what level is related to protection. We don't know how long that lasts. Now, we don't want to scare people to think, oh my God, I've got infected and now I'm going to get infected again. Unlikely, but what we have a lot to learn is what the durability of protection is. The one thing I can say as an infectious disease person is that it is very unlikely it's going to be like measles. If you and I got infected by measles as a child, I'm sure you did also. And the fact is you're protected essentially for life. It likely is not of that magnitude because of what we know about the common cold coronaviruses that keep reinfecting people. We feel it's likely measured in several months to a year or more, but it doesn't look like it's going to be 20, 30 years, which means that people need to get vaccinated even if they've been infected before, which we think is going to happen. And it is conceivable, though not absolute, that you may need to boost people every once in a while after the vaccine, which is fine.
Yep. So more generally, are we, and by that I mean the planet,
of travelers to quarantine for 14 days upon arrival. Oregon and New Mexico are both imposing partial statewide lockdown starting next week. New Mexico's governor is saying that the state is hitting reset, reimposing statewide stay-at-home orders, limiting staffing and capacity at essential businesses, and effectively closing non-essential businesses. Restaurants and bars will be takeout only. In Oregon, restaurants and bars are also closing on-site dining. Gyms and recreational facilities will be closed. Retail, grocery stores, and pharmacies will be reduced to 75% capacity, and religious services will be capped at 25 people indoors and 50 people outdoors.
It's a very dangerous situation.
224 seats, Republicans 211. Democrats held 232 seats going into the election. Joining me now, former California representative and author of She Will Rise, and also host of the new podcast, Naked Politics, Katie Hill. Katie, welcome back to the broadcast. First, I want to ask you about the plans with the president. He has no plans to concede the presidency. He's had some choice words. You've had some choice words for him on Twitter. What do you make of him not accepting that he lost?
I mean, I think that this was completely predictable. He's been signaling this for as long as I can remember, that he was not going to accept the results. He was teeing it up so that vote by mail was going to be discredited, so that, you know, there was as much doubt cast on the process and on the election itself. So I'm not at all surprised. I don't think any of us should be surprised. That doesn't mean it's acceptable. But it's, you know, it's the reason that we had to win by such a big margin, so that when he inevitably disputed it, it couldn't go anywhere. And so, you know, we're going to see these recounts, we're going to let it go through the process, and at the end of the day, he's going to have to leave.
Yeah, because in fact, 5 million popular votes win for Joe Biden wasn't big enough in this case to avoid what we're going through right now. But can you explain the damage that this might be doing for the transition?
Yeah, I mean, right now is a crucial period for any administration to be able to set up their staff, to make sure that they're getting the security briefings, to make...
Meantime, is trying to expand its COVID-19 testing and is now using Dodger Stadium as a testing site. And it's been very popular, to say the least. Paul Burkaman joining us now live from Los Angeles. I mean, there have been lines, I would say, in the pictures that I've seen since it opened, Paul.
Oh, absolutely. And Erica, we've got no official count, but we think this is the busiest testing site in the nation. Let me step out and show you why. They're able to function with 6 lines here at Dodger Stadium. And the hours previously were 10 to 4 in the afternoon. Now they are going, under the mayor's direction, from 8 to 8 at night. So the cars streaming through here. And as horrendous as this might look in terms of the lines, I can attest to this. I have been tested here a few times, and it usually takes somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes with those 6 lanes going here. It's almost like NASCAR. Try to get an inside lane, it seems like you go faster. So this is all part of the effort here in the city and county of Los Angeles to get way ahead and make sure people are tested as they fear a coming surge. Right now in California, the numbers are not horrific. LA County has 10 million people. We know that yesterday the statistics showed that there were something around 942 hospitalizations. The key to that number is we were well above 2,000 at one point in Los Angeles County, 2,481 new cases yesterday. But this is one of the keys, one of the ways they're trying to keep this under control, the COVID-19 pandemic, lots of testing, and then, of course, the contact tracing that comes after that. But yes, you're right, Erica. It is extremely busy here at Dodger Stadium. Not only was this a COVID-19 test site, you may know the Dodgers won the World Series, and they had early voting here, so a lot of Los Angelinos have been making their way through here in the past few weeks, Erica.
That is for sure, and it looks like it's going to remain busy for some time. Paul Burkaman, thank you.
There are those who think a herd immunity strategy is a good strategy.
Right.
Comment.
No, it is not. I mean, it just is not. I mean, I don't want to disrespect any of those who feel that way. That's their opinion, but it's just not the case. Because if you look now, 25%, we'll say, of the people in this country that got hit badly in New York are immune. 10% of the country as a whole, the CDC did a very good study and said about 10% of the people in the country, quote, have gotten infected or therefore protected. We have 245 to 250,000 deaths and 10 million infections. You're not going to get to herd immunity until you get somewhere up to 70 or so %. Now, if you want to go from 10 to 70, multiply that by 7 and look at the number of people who will have died to get to natural herd immunity. It's not feasible and it's not acceptable.
I've read a lot about,
depending on the infectiousness of the disease, in flu, sometimes 60 to 70%, but measles, we prefer numbers upwards of around 90%. This disease is highly contagious, but certainly we will know that number better when we fully can appreciate, again, Pfizer has said 90% effective. That will be a factor. And also the number of folks who get the vaccine. As you note, this is a huge issue. We are constantly thinking about this and worried about this, but that's why it's so important to look at that data so that we can have confidence that this vaccine is safe, and then we can encourage safe and effective, and we can encourage everyone to get this vaccine. I do want to say, though, Arthel, in the meantime, and even when we are getting folks vaccine, people should not forget the basic public health measures that we know work. Wearing a mask, physical distancing, avoiding large crowds, washing our hands. Those will continue to remain in effect even when and if we get the beginnings of distribution of a vaccine.
And more immediately, even if you decide to go home for Thanksgiving, be safe, like you just mentioned. You're really kind. You didn't tell me. Is it Vagelos?
Well, yes.
All right. You're very kind to me. Thank you, Dr. Patrice Harris. We'll get you on again. Really appreciate your insight. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Eric?
Yeah, it's a bit of a tongue twister there. Well, ready for this? A fugitive who was on the run for 50 years is now behind.
New Aspartame with essential oil. Welcome.
Just an easy phone call.
personal. Everyone's experience with either with COVID or with fear of contracting, it's very personal. People have, moving and personal stories. But I know you've talked about this a lot, but I think people would love to know, what do they do at Thanksgiving? You've talked about what you will do and won't do, but any general but still relevant advice you can give.
Yeah, I think every family unit needs to do a risk assessment and a risk-benefit ratio. If you have people in your family who are elderly or who have underlying conditions that make them susceptible to severe outcomes, you've got to make a decision. Do you want people to travel, to spend time in a crowded airport, to get on a plane and maybe not have time for quarantining after they get here, or not have the ability or understanding how they can get a test quickly enough? You may want to make a decision that you're just going to forestall it. Now, whenever I say that, I'm the Grinch that stole Thanksgiving. I'm not saying that. I'm saying everyone needs to seriously think about the risk-benefit. And you might say, I had a wonderful I had a wonderful Thanksgiving last year. I'm looking forward to a wonderful Thanksgiving next year. But maybe right now's not the time to have 25 people in a house when you take your mask off as you're eating.
So we have time just maybe for a couple more questions. But you mentioned that this is the most serious pandemic we faced in over 100 years, and I think we go back to 1918. Looking back at that, and I'm sure you've looked a lot at that, is there something to learn from that, how it plays out, and whether we go the path A or path B, and there's a good path and a bad path? I mean, learning from 1918, what do we need to do?
Yeah, what we need to do right now is that we know from historical little anecdotes that actually became studies, that when people took seriously the kind of things that I'm talking about, wearing a mask, physical separation, they did much better in cities that did that than in those that just said, the heck with it, we're going to do whatever we want to do.
Yeah.
So history is kind of repeating itself 102 years later.
Yeah. So last question, you started to talk about this at the beginning, but you've worked for many, many presidents, you've worked for many, many years. What keeps you in this game? I mean, it's not like you just get adulation, you also get a lot of grief. Again, you have guys, bodyguards. I mean, what keeps you going?
Each of us choose the path we want to take in our lives. I've chosen public service in the context of medicine and science. And there's nothing more exciting to me than that, or more challenging. So it totally energizes me. So when people talk about my age and how long I've been doing it, it almost seems like I've only been doing it for a short time. I have a long way to go.
All right. Well, I want to thank you very much for your work and for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Fascinating.
Thank you for having me.
Tax, hearing, including hearing aids and batteries, and
takers for the next team. And we have to make sure that major decisions we do in consultations with the incoming team, and that the incoming team has all the information that we have, all classified information, all information, as the 9/11 Commission report said, on covert activities, military activities. And President Obama carried forward that very important tradition, creating a culture that in this delicate transitional period, those officials holding these positions of public trust do so with a caretaker mentality. And President Trump is basically shattering that tradition. And what is so dangerous about it, of course, is not everything going on that we don't even know about. Military, covert intelligence, which the incoming team necessarily, of course, would not know about until we briefed on it. But in the middle of COVID, and particularly with the rollout of a vaccine, this is the equivalent of a major military operation. And you should have, right now, a kind of right seat, left seat consultations going on to make sure that goes smoothly. And so, look, it's not surprising that President Trump is being petulant in defeat, but it's pretty shocking that he's withholding this basic norm of beginning to transfer knowledge and information to the incoming team.
And look, Brett, something that you've pointed out.
The false information initially spread by a few is only multiplying. Drew Griffin, CNN, Atlanta.
Coming up, the hunger crisis intensifying as a coronavirus pandemic also intensifies. And the situation is likely only to get worse during the holidays. The president of the Food Bank for New York City is with us live.
There's moving.
Timing over there. Get him here.
Runner.
Yeah, if it doesn't go down the hill, it loses a good 30 yards of kick and roll.
But look at his score. He just blasted into first place.
And that's a career high for Diesel Dave. Now he has a chance to win his first career freestyle in Anaheim, but Morgan Kane could have a lot to do with that. And more.
See that to believe it. 11 catches now for Freifogel, 200 yards and 2 touchdowns
on the board. Del Rapids, though, that was a close one. The double overtime win, the last game of the regular season. And then that Madison game.
Sunday on Fox and the Fox Sports app.
From the WWE Thunderdome, the Savior Seth Rollins faces his former disciple Murphy, while Roman Reigns and the Superstars of SmackDown prepare for Survivor Series.
KELOLAND Weather Now gives you instant local weather information when you want it. KELOLAND Live Doppler HD, the current conditions, the 7-day forecast, all the local weather information you...
Big launch. Nobody's tried it. It really is a spa and a hand cream. It is the sea salt lavender. Then we go to...
Something really bad is happening. We're being invaded from hyperspace by aliens.
And
that has done something in just a few months that I didn't think was possible. We've had partnerships like this before.
And by the way, stay online on the Champagne Diamond chevrons. I think we're down to just a handful of those.
Strikes their planet, they have to begin life all over.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
But this I've been able to study.
What if our military forces just let?
So many different alignments between 1993 and 2003. We looked at, just using 6 Mile Road. We looked at going...
A magnifying mirror. I know that sounds terrible to do first thing in the morning, but do it. Do it just the first time you use this and wait till you see the change in your skin.
Now, I know this was quick. We've only got about a minute left here, but...
Obviously, offering you these colored masks for less than $10. These are not either or things. You need to get the collection of these things because these are all the things you need to do.
Baby, if you want me, then all of this will go away.
And how much does it cost?
And you have to weigh those two factors based.
Now, you could drill these out, and that's perfectly viable. But if I can, I like to use hand tools. So I'm going to grab a big old mortise chisel. And this is just a chisel. It's a little bit heavier and thicker than a standard chisel. And this is really a tool that's made for chopping. So I can just line it up at the start, give it a good whack.
Make it look like you're tied up. I'll lower you down into the ditch.
No one told me. I thought I was doing this myself. What is that all about?
Early season extract, trouble and on his way down. Hardy gets the sack and a loss of a couple of yards.
It's Hilton walking gingerly, keeled over right now. He's a great two-way player. We talked about his attributes already. You saw what he did in game.
Absolutely. These guys turn into windshields at this point. So I love that. And then we get to this. And I know you wanted to point out.
Remorse for what you've done? You're going to hell.
Friday now, only at Target. This week, save on Keurig.
Classic. Grab it now in Wendy's 2 for $5.
Oh my, look at that! I can't believe that's the same place.
How long does it say for the paint to dry?
6 to 8 hours.
6 to 8 hours? No.
Who are you and why are you exclaiming at me?
I'm a surfer, bro. I need some surf clothes for the big surf competition.
The calming scent of lavender by Downy Infusions Calm. Laundry isn't done until it's done with Downy.
Toward that.
All right, bring in your damn stove, but remember to lift it with your back.
Jeez. Unmistakable taste. San Pellegrino. Tastefully Italian.
No funny stuff.
Yeah.
Put all the passengers up front. They're...
Okay? Okay. 1, 2, 3. Check it out. This is it.
Wow! What?
Pull a pirate chestnut out of here, and I am gonna my pants.
There we go. There we go. We got it. We got it. And I am no,
Dad? Oh, their pet feeding system for Scruffy.
Okay.
Good luck, buddy. We're leaving your own devices on this one.
Shut up!
It was probably not the case because when she was 2 years old, I had.
UND will travel to Omaha for 10 games in 20 days against the best competition in the country.
Ancestry genealogist Nika Sewell-Smith.
This is your ethnicity estimate. These are all the percentages for your...
At Food Bank for New York City and other food banks across the country are grappling with as well. And that is that donated food is in shorter supply. And so food banks are competing on the open market with the likes of Walmart and Stop and Shop and other big box retailers for purchasing food. And so our work is getting more expensive in the context of COVID and ensuring that we can feed people. And so donor dollars are especially important. We're really efficient with how we can purchase food. So every dollar turns into 5 meals. And so if people are positioned to be able to be generous, they can visit us at foodbanknewyorkcity.org, or you can find us on Facebook at Food Bank for New York City. We're focused right now, Erica, on making sure that people not only have food for the long haul, but also to be able to celebrate the holidays. I tell people often that food is love, food is culture, and so we're on pace to distribute more than 100,000 turkeys across the footprint of New York City to make sure that our neighbors can celebrate that all-American holiday of Thanksgiving.
Food is love, food is culture, food is security, and as people are thinking about what they're thankful for, I hope many, I am certainly one of them, are also thankful for the work that you and your team are doing every single day and for your counterparts across the country. Leslie, thank you for your time today, and we'll continue to check in.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.
Well, now more than ever, we know that the world needs heroes. We need something good to focus on. This year, CNN Heroes isn't just saluting everyday heroes. We're also taking a look at the larger moments that define the biggest stories of the year. And you can vote for this year's most inspiring moments at cnnheroes.com. Lastly, as I mentioned, we all need a little something to smile about right now. This has certainly got a lot of play recently. This is the gargantuan gator wandering a golf course in Southwest Florida during the recent tropical storm. Perhaps even scarier, though, an alligator expert says that the size of this one is nothing unusual. The animal's sheer mass left many on social media wondering if the beast was even real. I can tell you one thing for sure, it is not one I want to meet in person. Thanks for joining me today. I'm Erica Hill, in for Federico Whitfield. CNN Newsroom continues with Ana Cabrera after the break.
This year, our driveways have brought us US embassy bombings in Kenya in 1998. According to the New York Times, he was killed by Israeli operatives acting perhaps with the cooperation of the US, although
masks. One mask that they could be themselves around each other, and another mask that they wore around people who were white.
Today, 7% of that group were people of color.
Security teams, and they were working to defuse a terrorist threat on the mall on Inauguration Day. This stuff happens quickly, and in the best of times, you have 75 days to organize what is in effect the biggest corporation in the world. Now, of course, we have no transition, and frankly, the head of the GSA is a disgrace for not having begun it. If she had a problem with it, she should have ascertained the transition, the winner, started the process, and resigned.
John Kelly has essentially told Politico the delay actually hurts our national security. I also want to read a quote from Washington Post. It was an op-ed written by Andy Card and John Podesta. And in it, they say this, and I quote, "When the 9/11 Commission finished its report, it found that the delayed transition, quote, hampered the new administration in identifying, recruiting, clearing, and obtaining Senate confirmation of key appointees in the national security arena. The Commission also concluded that avoiding future disruptions in transitions was deeply in the national interest." So in fact, had that transition been smoother in 2000, there is an argument to be made that maybe the Bush administration may not have overlooked the intelligence that led to what happened on 9/11.
Well, you know, I write about the 9/11 attacks in my new book, The Spy Masters. And I would argue actually that the 9/11 was not a transition or a staffing problem. 9/11 was a problem of the Bush White House simply not being able to take Al-Qaeda seriously and frankly ignoring the warnings. So I would cite, as much more relevant here, I would cite the fact that in January of 2020, the President's Daily Brief, the PDB that's prepared for Donald Trump, had warnings of a coronavirus, a dangerous virus that was headed our way. We are suffering the catastrophic consequences of a president who ignored that warning in the President's Daily Brief in January. Right now, by the way, not only is Joe Biden not being briefed with classified information, which he should have, but the entire briefing process has broken down. I don't think Donald Trump is getting briefings right now. Even in the best of times, Trump reluctantly had those briefings.
Yeah, I was going to follow up and say, according to our reporting, it seems as if the current president rarely reads those briefings cover to cover. Chris Whipple, thank you.
Show more of you.
Hi, folks.
To explore.
It's one of the only days of this year
The next thing I want to show you is a picture that we have from dry dress. And dry dress is a dress rehearsal that we do with the crew. And they do the whole thing where they get suited up at the building, what they call the ONC building here on Kennedy Space Center. They get suited up, they come across in their Teslas, and they go up the tower and get all the way into Dragon. And it's a very important process that we do, where we walk through all of that with our teams, the ground teams working with the crew themselves, and make sure everything checks out. When I look at this picture, again, I get very excited to think about this next step on this big journey that we have ahead of us. We've got 4 astronauts who will be going up. We have one person who's never been to space, Victor, who's very excited. We have SIOUX, who's our first international partner, who will be joining us, which is really, really cool. All right. Let's talk a little bit about what's going to happen on launch day itself. As I talked about dry dress.
It's effective. This far exceeds any and all expectations. Nobody thought they'd get to that level. And we have others coming which we think will be at equal level.
Pfizer this week announcing that its vaccine for COVID-19 was more than 90% effective in late-stage trials, and that the company could apply to the FDA as early as this month for expedited approval to distribute the vaccine. That news coming as Joe Biden announces the members of his COVID-19 advisory board, and as one of those advisors suggests that a nationwide lockdown of 4 to 6 weeks could help bring the virus under control in the U.S. We're back with Dan Henninger and Wall Street Journal Business World columnist Holman Jenkins. So welcome, Holman. So first, let me ask you about this surge in COVID infections now that we're seeing in a lot of different places in the country. Are we going to see this dark winter that Joe Biden predicted?
I'm not sure we will. We're seeing the third big surge. Hospitalizations now are exactly where they were in mid-April and again in mid-July. I'm hoping that this is where it begins to peter out as people begin to physically distance again as they get the message. There's 15 or 20 states where things are looking dicey right now, but that's not the country as a whole. Most of the population lives in places that are doing okay. We're seeing the same thing in Europe, and in just the last few days, their surge has begun to turn down as people begin to, get sensible about their personal activities again. So I'm hoping we'll see the same here.
Okay, so let's turn to the vaccine. That 90% effective figure, really excellent and very promising. How do you see that going ahead, particularly because the Pfizer vaccine is the same platform, messenger RNA, that Moderna is using for its vaccine?
Yeah, it's amazing that this happened in less than 12 months. It's practically a scientific miracle. I think we're going to see more vaccines coming out. We're going to see a whole bunch of things converging. They're going to make COVID a lot easier to live with. The vaccines, better therapies, also at-home instant testing is going to make a big difference. No one is talking about that. And plus, people aren't talking about the fact that tens of millions of Americans have been infected now and have some immunity to this disease, so won't be able to pass it. So I think in the next few months, you're actually going to see things looking up quite a bit.
And who do you give credit for the speed with which these therapies and vaccines are moving? I mean, is this, I mean, private industry and innovation, obviously, technology part of it, but do you give any credit here for the Trump administration and government?
Absolutely. They put money into this. They mobilize people in the way that only the federal government can do. But also, I mean, all the companies were just hungering to get after this challenge because that's what they live for. And there's a huge market for it. It's a huge kudos to their reputation and all of that. And, pharma gets a lot of grief from politicians. So there was incentive all around to show what they could do.
All right, let's turn to the Biden advisory board. You've got the situation where Michael Osterholm, one of them, says 4 to 6 weeks for a lockdown. We know Ezekiel Emanuel, he's a lockdown lover, said so in the summer. What do you make of this advice that the vice president is getting?
Well, these advisory boards are meant to be seen and not heard. The last thing Biden wants is them advising them through media interviews and on TV and that sort of thing. There is zero appetite among any politician who actually has constituents for another big lockdown. Even Osterholm has walked this back in the last 24 hours because he knows there is no stomach for this. And Joe Biden certainly doesn't want to come in and pronounce lockdown on his first day in office.
Dan, do you agree with that? Because, we've seen these guys, these so-called experts, who always point to the science and then say, by the way, the science justifies whatever I'm proposing. I mean, could Biden go in that direction?
Well, he's the one who keeps saying he'll listen to his scientific advisors, and the drift of his committee, Dr. Osterholm of Minnesota, Ezekiel Emanuel, and the rest, is to go towards more severe lockdowns, and so Joe Biden would have to resist them. Pretty much the way Donald Trump sort of resisted similar advice for Dr. Anthony Fauci, though I think we may be looking back fondly at Anthony Fauci by the time the Biden people are done. As if these infections can, and keep in mind as well, Joe Biden won't be in charge of the coronavirus till late January or early February. So if Holman is suggesting the surge peaks and comes down by then, there may not be as much pressure in late January for lockdowns. The problem's going to come over the next several months, and the question is whether Democratic politicians or politicians in general, in the absence of any other strategy that they can come up with themselves, will opt for more lockdowns.
So, Holman, what do you think of Biden? How will Biden differ from Trump in policy?
Well, he's not going to at all. The runway is laid out for him. Get the vaccine out there, get more testing, especially instant testing that people can do at home so they can take themselves out of circulation if they've got it. These things are already, the path is laid down. All he has to do is follow it. His big discussion point will be who gets the vaccine first. There's two arguments. Give it to old people and vulnerable people so they don't clog up the hospitals, or give it to young people so they don't spread the disease far and wide. It's just a modeling and math exercise to figure out which approach is going to save more lives. That will be his big decision.
All right, thank you for that optimism. Thank you. Still ahead, fewer Americans applied for unemployment benefits last week as the job market continues to improve. But will new coronavirus shutdowns shut down the economic recovery?
Your journey requires Liberty Mutual.
3% of the vote, so you're wondering if more folks that voted for that Libertarian candidate are going to vote more for David Perdue there or John Ossoff. What are you hearing?
Well, we continue to say all eyes on Georgia, and that's not only because of this recount or audit that's happening behind me, but it's because of that Senate race that you were talking about, the runoff to come on January 5th. I'll tell you, so much money has already poured into the state of Georgia. People know how influential and how impactful these two runoff races will be. What you're seeing from these candidates are two different strategies, whether or not you're the Democratic candidate or the Republican candidates. We saw the Republican candidates, Senators Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue. They're campaigning as essentially a unity ticket. They're campaigning together. Yesterday we saw them campaigning with former Florida Governor Rick Scott. When you listen to the Democratic candidates, they're focusing on health care. They're doing more independent events, but they're focused on health care and the coronavirus. It's something that we'll continue to watch as we head to that runoff.
All right, Jack Brewster for us. Thank you as always, my friend. Great to see you this afternoon. After the break, everybody, Trump supporters are descending on D.C. today, falsely claiming his election victory, how the Million MAGA March came to be, and a look at the far-right groups fueling the fire in the president's refusal to concede. We'll be right back.
members to the ISS is this
power. You set an example. By your own actions, you try to illustrate how people should behave in the democracy, and then maybe your example will be followed. They're not living up to that.
Well, I hope everybody's listening closely to what you had to say. Professor Timothy Snyder, thank you for enlightening all of us and educating us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Tonight, CNN brings you the story of Joe Biden and his long journey from receiving the Democratic Party presidential nomination this summer to becoming president-elect. Joe Biden's long journey tonight at 10 Eastern on CNN. Up next, inside the dangerous misinformation game the president and his allies are playing. You're live in the CNN Newsroom.
These days, we're all together all the time.
You are allergic to Ozempic. Stop taking The Tuda is not for everyone. Call your doctor about unusual mood changes.
Stitch or two, back stitch.
The opportunity to demonstrate the kind of law and order you're going to have here in Dry Lake. Oh, good. Now, I'm going to give you till sundown to get out of town. Or else.
Or else what, Sheriff?
Troublemakers, you know the type. Well, you heard the sheriff. Yeah, Go on, get out of here.
Like a bug on a pin. I know, I said it. Well, what now? It'd take the Army of Virginia to get him out of there.
It's why they're again killing cops. This has been a long time coming, and this is a revolution that they are attempting. I don't care if they put a smiley face or an old man's face in front of it. They did that with my brother. All right, Joe Biden is just a face. He's a figurehead for the evil that lurks behind him. But I will tell you this. I will tell you this. We have always been slow to the fight. As Americans, we don't want to fight. We are the true liberals, lowercase l, live and let live. We've got other things to do with our lives than fight. We got family, we got schools, we got businesses. We were slow to World War I. We were slow to World War II. We were slow to the Cold War. And we were slow to the Culture War. But we won World War I. We won World War II. We won the Cold War. And we will win the Culture War.
My name is Dustin Stockton. I just want to take a moment to thank Women for America First and the organizers and all of you for coming out to stop the steal and support President Trump. Woo! Jennifer Lawrence and I have been doing this for a long time, politics, but I have one message that I want to get across to you, and it's so important when you go back home. We have to meet offline. We have to be Sam Adams in the basement of our bars, meeting with our neighbors. We have to fight big tech. We have to fight big media, and we have to fight big money to protect America for my kids and for your kids. This is a seminal moment in our country's history. If we let them steal the election from President Trump, we will never get it back. Our freedom is not coming back. We must rise up, which is why I know every single one of you is here. Thank you. From the Tea Party on, what people don't realize is that Donald Trump was the natural progression of the Tea Party movement and the fight for our Constitution. You must come together. You must. Scott Pressler always says it, MVP. This is a movement of love, but we must fight. We must stand up to the liars and the fake news. We must stand up to the big tech oligarchs who want to silence us. Fight. When we march to the Supreme Court, we have a message to send. Our institutions have been corrupted and weaponized against we the people. And that's what Joe Biden's agenda is. There is no way that senile old fool beat the hardest working and greatest president ever. I love you guys. Thank you for being here. We'll see you at the Supreme Court.
All right, good afternoon, America. Yes. My name is Debbie Carolinas. I'm the Vice President of Moms for America. Woo! I'm honored to say a few words here today. Moms for America is a national movement of mothers reclaiming our country for truth, family, freedom, and the Constitution. Of America. Amen. As a wife and a mother of three, I stand here concerned like all of you. America is at a crossroads.
Anywhere convenience, everyday security.
May I remind you that we have a president of the United States. We have a president of the United States. That is so very important.
That means Pelosi's power is diminished. She's no longer the centerpiece of the Democratic political universe.
I think having a president of your party changes the dynamics. Joe Biden is going to be at the top of the ticket and representing us and the standard bearer of our party.
Pelosi says Democratic losses aren't on her.
I take credit for winning a majority and holding.
Still, Pelosi must grapple with internal divisions. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy says Democrats veered toward socialism. Conservative Democrats believe liberal Democrats nearly cost their party the House, and progressives are doubling down.
Defunding the police in order to fund other areas has people going apoplectic. I think that this is about a budgetary shift, and we have not made that shift yet, and we need to make that shift.
Democrats won the House in 2018 partly because of Pelosi's power flipping seats in her home state of California. But Republicans reclaimed a number of those seats in the Golden State this year. That included a victory by a Korean-American congresswoman-elect.
With my accent, I still won. And people actually, when we stick to the issues and we just try to work with residents and work for residents, I think we're going to keep winning.
It's not even 2021 yet. But GOP gains means that Republicans are already looking toward the 2022 midterms and a chance to flip the House.
Well, there's some dire warnings from state and local officials saying that coronavirus is now spreading like wildfire. Doctors warn it will likely get even worse as we head into the winter and the holiday season. An update for what you should know next.
Hearing, including hearing aids and batteries, and prescription drug coverage
is extinguished. There is no hope. The flame must burn bright and illuminate the way for our families. The light must shine in the darkness, and as mothers, we will fight for the torch of freedom, because without it, our children and our grandchildren will not be able to radiate and live in America. That is why we stand united for an election that ensures every legal vote must count. President Trump, the mamas are with you. Let us all carry the torch of freedom, and may it shine ever so brightly. God bless you.
You are awesome. I am so excited to be here. My name is Megan Barth. I'm referred to as the Reagan Babe. I come all the way back from the Tea Party for 12 years. This is so reminiscent of the Tea Party when we kicked the Democrats' asses in 2010 up and down the ticket. The grassroots, the silent majority is loud, and we are alive and well. We are here to stop the steal. Say it with me. Stop the steal. Stop the steal. Stop the steal. Stop the steal. We know this election was stolen. Do we really believe that the party who believes that looting is justified in the name of social justice didn't steal this election in the name of social justice? I refer to myself as the Reagan Babe because there were three men that affected my life. Ronald Reagan, my father, and my grandfather. They were all veterans, and they fought tooth and nail and nearly died for this country. And I will do the same, because I am not going to watch my country be destroyed from within by the communists, by the Marxists, by the socialists, that have found a home in the Democrat Party. Why is it that communists and Marxists and socialists find a home in the Democrat Party? It's because that's where they are welcomed. We don't want to.
Joining me now is Christian Clark, President and Executive Director of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under the Law. Thank you for being with me tonight, Christian. Let me ask you, when we look at the lawsuits and the apparent legal strategy of the president, we're not only concerned about it in terms of partisan politics, whether one is Democrat or Republican, but we're actually talking about robbing people of their voting rights and the decisions that their votes have led to.
That's right. I mean, we've never seen anything like this. Lawsuits filed all across our country that aim to disenfranchise hundreds of thousands, if not millions of voters after the fact. These are eligible voters. And there's one thing that's getting left out of the conversation. These lawsuits single out counties that are home to disproportionate numbers of black voters and voters of color.
Yeah, and I want to push you on that. I want to push you on that because last night you tweeted about a Trump lawsuit in Pennsylvania that you're seeking to have dismissed, reporting that the law firm has withdrawn from the case. What about this case is so nefarious and what happens now? And I think it represents some of where you were going.
Well, this is a lawsuit filed without substantial evidence. When we file voting rights lawsuits and election lawsuits, we pony up the experts who have done the work in advance to substantiate the claims that we hope to prove before a federal judge. And these cases lack evidence. They lack meaningful evidence. So I'm not surprised that law firms are dropping like hotcakes off of these lawsuits because their reputations are at stake. I want to mention a suit that was filed in Georgia 2 days ago. That case singles out several counties in Georgia: Fulton, Cobb, Gwinnett, Augusta, and Chatham, and a few others. These are counties literally that are home to the largest numbers of voters of color in the state of Georgia. And the sum total of people who would be impacted are about 1.5 million eligible voters of color. 2020 was a hard-fought election season for Americans across our country, but especially for voters of color who endured long lines and several-hour wait times to vote. So we are not going to stand by idly while the Trump campaign singles out voters of color to disenfranchise them after the fact. These cases are baseless and frivolous. Many of them have already failed, and we expect that the remaining suits will fail as well. My organization, the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, has gotten involved in about 6 of these lawsuits, and we will fight to the bitter end to make sure that the voices of all voters, but especially of voters of color, are not locked out from this important election. The race is over.
Now, one of the ploys by the Trump campaign is to accuse dead people of voting, but local reporting keeps showing that they accused people of being dead that are alive and voted legally. What kind of damage can be made up, these claims that are made up, or fraudulent claims, what damage does this do to the electoral system?
It undermines public confidence in our electoral process. And, you know, it sends an awful message to the public, to poll workers, to election officials, to people who volunteered and worked incredibly hard to make sure that the 2020 election could go forward in the wake of a global pandemic. The evidence that you just mentioned, you know, there's a Postal Service worker who offered up false testimony claiming that he saw people backdating ballots. Right. We saw another lawsuit where they alleged that there were 4 dead voters. It turns out that it was very easy to uncover so far that at least 2 of these people are alive and well. You know, these folks should be sanctioned for filing these frivolous claims. And, you know, again, this is an attempt to undermine the integrity of an election that is over. The American public has spoken. They have determined who they've chosen to be their next president-elect, and it's time for us to move forward. But in the interim, we're going to keep fighting in the court. As quick as they bring these lawsuits, we will be there to fight back.
Now, there have been 7 of us that lead national civil rights groups. You with the Lawyers Committee, me with National Action Network, and 5 other groups that have worked together throughout the 8 years of President Obama and have met virtually with President-elect Biden when he was running, and he's committed to meet after the race, which we look forward to him doing with us and other groups, Congressional Black Caucus and other groups. What do you think are the things that we would want to see from the civil rights community, President Biden and Vice President Harris do in the civil rights area immediately after taking office to at least begin in the first 100 days?
Some of the immediate priorities are getting the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department back in business. This is a critical agency that has just been asleep for the last few years, leaving to us, the civil rights organizations, the task of picking up the slack. We need them to reverse course on dangerous moves that they've taken. They filed a suit challenging affirmative action at Yale University. They've weighed in on a pending case involving Harvard University. We need them to withdraw those cases. We need to restore HUD and the Department of Education, which were decimated under the leadership of Ben Carson and DeVos. We need to work on the courts and restoring judicial diversity to our federal courts. With respect to race and gender, we have turned the clock back in devastating fashion over the last few years. There is a long list of priorities, but to me, those rise at the very top and are of great urgency.
Otezla is not an injection or a cream.
Stop the steal. Thank you. How many of y'all were at your state capitol last weekend? There were 30,250. Right now in all 50 state capitals, there's more, and we got tens of thousands coming into town here We're going to make our voices heard, and we're going to protect this president by stopping the steal. Now look, these other guys, they're fiery speakers. I'm more of an organizer. December 14th is the date that we all need to remember. Next week, we're going to start lobbying the state legislature of Pennsylvania, of Wisconsin, of Michigan, of Arizona, and Georgia. And we're going to tell them to ignore the rigged elections and send Republican electors to the Electoral College. Or send it to the House of Representatives.
Vaccines in our near future, and of course the science relies on data, but there's still some unknowns. I want to know, how encouraged are you about a coronavirus vaccine or vaccines, availability, distribution and storage, training to administer it, where on the body you get the shot? What's your wait-and-see position?
Yeah, so we are waiting for data, and right now we've just seen some press releases and a little bit of data, but I'll tell you, I'm pretty enthusiastic. So let's talk about the good news. The vaccines are coming, and they look like they're going to be even more effective than I thought they were going to be. And I expect, and again, don't know for sure because we'll have to see, but I expect that by January 1st, 2 or maybe even 3 vaccines might be authorized for use. The challenge is that we got to get a couple 100 million Americans vaccinated. And it's an incredible logistical challenge. We haven't done all the work needed to make that happen. So it's probably going to take us 3-4 months if everything goes very well, maybe longer before a majority of Americans get vaccinated. So that's why we got to hang on tight here. We can't let people die in the last days before things start getting under better control. If we can hang on for a couple of months, things will start getting better.
Well, that is encouraging news. Wrapping up here, I mean, how do the grim and alarming numbers, we know how it affects you as a doctor, but if I want to get you to take off your white coat for a moment, how does this sound to you as a person? You already mentioned you have elderly parents who you're not going to see this Thanksgiving because of the coronavirus, and you want to just stick to your immediate family. I mean, how does this affect you personally?
It's been awful. I mean, it's been awful for me. It's been awful for everybody I know. The way people have been locked down. I've got 3 children. It's been awful for them. They've been mostly out of school for much of the year. The fact that we have let this pandemic get out of control, driven in part by all the misinformation out there, but also just we haven't taken it seriously enough. I think all of us are feeling the weight of it. The good news here is it is going to get better. 2021 will be meaningfully better. Just that we're in a pretty tough moment right now, and I think if we can all hang on, do the basic things, I promise it's going to be better in 21.
Okay, well, meanwhile, I wish you and your family good health, and please stay safe. Dr. Ashish Jha, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Eric?
Better in 21. Let's certainly hope so. Thank you, Doctor. Well, world leaders are reaching out to President-elect Joe Biden as his team prepares to roll back President Trump's America First policies. What they are telling him next.
Prosecution. The big question then, will President Trump try to pardon himself on the way out? We simply do not know if this is lawful because it falls under the header of things that have never happened before. On the one hand, there's no specific limitation on the pardon power in the Constitution. On the other hand, the framers deplored self-dealing. This would be the ultimate form of self-dealing. So, Anna, if Trump does pardon himself, it will certainly be a first, and it will be a historical stain on his record.
Now, Ellie, this is an unlikely scenario, but another viewer wants to know, could Republican state legislatures appoint their own slates of presidential electors for President Trump, even if their states voted for President-elect Biden?
Yeah, Anna, this theory is out there. I'm hearing it a lot from our viewers. I just want to make it clear. This is not going to happen. Now, the Constitution does give state legislatures the power to choose the manner by which they choose the state's presidential electors. But dating back to the 1800s, every single state legislature has had a law saying we do that based on the popular vote within the state. So, while state legislatures could theoretically change that, they would have to do it by 1, passing a new law, and 2, doing it before the election. It's common sense, and it's the law. You can't just say, we'll choose based on the popular vote, and then change it after the fact. Also, as a political matter, It seems very unlikely that state legislators would be on board with this and appoint electors that go against their state's vote. It would be fundamentally undemocratic. It would be politically self-destructive. So I know there's a lot of concern about this, but folks, don't lose sleep over this possibility.
A lot of people are asking this next question. Can the Trump administration legally prevent the incoming Biden administration from conducting a full transition?
So they're certainly trying, but it won't stand, I don't believe, if challenged in court. So the GSA, the General Service Administration, that's the agency that controls certain transition funding and access for the incoming Biden administration. Now, that money gets released only when the GSA does what's called ascertains that there's been an apparent winner of the election. Now, the law doesn't tell us exactly when we have an apparent winner of the election, but let's use some common sense here. We are well beyond apparent. We are into done deal territory. Now, the Biden transition team is considering legal action. They've said that. It seems they want to avoid escalating the tension at this moment, but eventually, if push comes to shove, they may need to force this into court, and if they do, I am confident they're very likely that they will win. So GSA is really pushing the legal limits here, and they are impeding a safe and smooth transition. That is potentially dangerous to our national security, and it is terrible for our democracy.
Ellie Honig, it's always great to have you with us. Thank you for doing this with us week in and week out. I want to remind our viewers.
Thanks, because here is where true freedom exists and dreams are conquered. Thank you. God bless our president. Let's keep America great, stop the steal, and God bless America.
You should see the view from up here. You guys are awesome. 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 I'm from Arizona. I do not need a plane to fly back with the enthusiasm and energy that is coming off you. Keep it up. Keep it up. We want one simple thing. What's that? 4 more years. 4 more years. 4 more years. 4 more years. Let me get serious for a second. Last week, the Senate in the state of Arizona, by the way, I'm State Senator Vince Leach for whatever that's worth. Last week, our Senate President in Arizona sent our Secretary of State, a Democrat, and said, let's have free, independent inspection of the polls. She said, no. No. In fact, we found out that in 2017, she said, you are supporting Donald J. Trump. My message to you this afternoon is very, very simple. We have, in Arizona, 11 electoral votes. And Madam Chair, where we are back there, Arizona is ready to cast 11 electoral votes for the next President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. It's time that each one of us, no matter where we're from, what corner of the country, go home and fight for Donald J. Trump. God bless you. God bless Donald J. Trump. And God bless America. Thank you very much.
Hey everyone! My name is Tracy Beans. I'm an independent journalist and the editor-in-chief of UncoverDC.com. We do actual journalism. The fake news is the enemy of the people. The reason why there's such a divide in this country is because the media has lied to people for decades. You all saw through the bull, and you're here to support elections with integrity and our president for 4 more years. information so you can make informed decisions. That's gone by the wayside. So independent journalists are coming back to make the media likable again. Support your independent journalists. Support the president and his family. Support transparency and integrity in our elections. God bless all of you, and God bless the United States of America.
I would be surprised if the centrality of China in U.S. foreign policy changes, because what has driven a broad bipartisan consensus to get a lot tougher on China than the Obama administration was, is China's aggressive and destabilizing behavior. So I think a Biden administration, it will do things differently than the Trump administration did, but China will continue to be the major focus, I believe.
Russia, Vladimir Putin. Does Biden start calling out Vladimir Putin the way President Trump has not?
The Biden campaign and President Biden, Vice President-elect Biden himself have said they're going to do so. I think it's probably significant that Vladimir Putin is the only leader of a major country who hasn't yet called to congratulate President-elect Biden. I think they're looking to bring in even more transparency in financial transactions from Putin and other Russian leaders, and I think that'll be deeply uncomfortable for the Russians.
Iran, the Iranian nuclear agreement, which Mr. Biden supports and the president, of course, pulled out.
Yeah, it's hard for me to see. I understand that the Biden administration will want to return to the agreement, but there's a lot that's changed since then. Iran has enriched 12 times the amount of uranium they were permitted under the agreement, and we've seen the ascension of hardliners in this central arenas of power in Iran. They're going to have a presidential election in a few months, and it's very likely that because U.S. withdrawal from the agreement didn't produce the agreement itself, and especially after American withdrawal, didn't produce the kind of economic relief that Iranians were hoping for. I think it's emboldened more conservative, anti-American factions in the Iranian leadership.
Dr. Kori Schake of AEI, American Enterprise Institute, thank you. Next time we'll get to Kim Jong-un, who is still building his missiles despite everything.
That's right.
He's not going away. All right, Doctor, thank you. Arthel?
Well, Eric, the world's best golfers are hitting the links in Augusta, Georgia.
25% lower risk from heart attack and stroke.
Obama, against the advice of his aides, released his birth certificate in the White House briefing room, but then told young staffers, quote, "We're better than this. Remember that."
I have great respect.
Still, it seemed an unsettling tone had been set.
Especially in the second half of President Obama's time in office, he did spend a lot of time battling the very forces that brought Trump into power, the sentiment against him as the first black president, the angst within the country about the idea of changing the demographic.
Obama writes that his predecessor, George W. Bush, could not have been more gracious during their transition. That Bush's daughters, Jenna and Barbara, gave Obama's daughters, Sasha and Malia, their own tour of the White House. Quote, "President Bush would end up doing all he could to make the 11 weeks between my election and his departure go smoothly." April Ryan, who covered that transition and others, laments what we're going through now, with Trump refusing to accept Biden's victory.
It is the ugliest that we've ever seen, and our founding fathers are probably turning over, watching this from wherever they are.
Obama also gets intensely personal, especially about the toll his presidency took on his wife, Michelle. Quote, "All her previous sources of frustration became more concentrated, more vivid, whether it was my round-the-clock absorption with work or the way politics exposed our family to scrutiny and attacks."
They put their lives on the line. They were vulnerable. They put their hearts on the line to be attacked, to be chastised, to be made fun of.
One of the White House reporters we interviewed, Tolu Olorunipa, says he'll be interested to hear how former President Obama sees the upcoming Biden administration, whether Obama will view that as a return to normal or whether that's even possible. We may learn that in the next volume of Obama's memoir, which is coming later. Brian Todd, CNN, Washington.
Just a quick programming note for you. Coming up tonight, CNN brings you the story of Joe Biden and his long...
First to get the Medal of Honor. And if you think that we're going to stop fighting now for our freedom and liberty, you got something coming. 4 more years! 4 more years! 4 more years! 4 more years! And I just have one more message for you, Mr. President Donald J. Trump. Latinos for Trump. Hashtag we are woke and hashtag we are the storm. All right, stop the steal. Stop the steal. Stop the steal. Stop the steal. Thank you all so much. Our organization is united with people from Lexit, like Jesse Holguin. We made it a point to make sure that the Lexit or Latinos are exiting the Democrat Party. You do not own us. We are God-loving people. We are family-oriented. Get ready, Latinos for Trump! Thank you all, and God bless you, and God bless this United States of America, and God bless Donald J. Trump.
How are you guys doing today? Good morning.
Choose our health plan with...
Put Humpty back together again. Well, remember, President Trump ran on building a great wall, but on November 20th, he had a great fall, and all of the lawsuits and silent Republicans won't put this president back together again. He is not a victim. He is a result of the American people assessing for themselves his performance in the last 4 years and voting in unprecedented and historic numbers to let him go his way. And nobody, I don't care what kind of glue you use, can put together a case that is not there. Mr. President, the people have spoken. And like Humpty, you can't put this back together again. I'll be right back.
Testing. What's new?
Marshal, I knew that I could depend on you to uphold the principles of justice. I knew you wouldn't be swayed. Say, how do you cut a notch in a snake? I brought in that killer. He was the victim of a snake to which I hold clear title. Now listen here, you two. There's a reward, and you're both going to split it and be happy about it. Or you'll share this jail cell. What do you do for a living?
I am sole owner and operator of a gold mine. The Paiute Princess.
Say that again.
The Paiute